and welcome to Rewind Reviews. You guys know what time of the year it is. It is December for you, not for us.
Finally, it's Christmas.
But it
feels like we've been waiting all year. That was finally. That was that was me singing an extract from "Finally It's Christmas," which was a song on Hanson's second Christmas album. Finally, it's Christmas.
I love that they did 2 Christmas albums.
They did.
Did they not say all they needed to say about Christmas in the first album, Chris? That's my question.
To be fair, they were like 20 years apart, I think. Like Snowed In was 97, and Finally It's Christmas was... Hold on.
I don't need to know the answer.
Finally It's Christmas was 2017, so literally 20 years apart.
There you go. Beautiful. So
it's a great album. It's a great Christmas album.
Sure.
It's Christmas.
So it's December. So it's the as everyone knows, it's the spookiest time of the year. So we're doing horror films because that's it's Halloween and that. That's what December is related to. So we're doing The Santa Curse today, a movie about a man that gets a horrible curse that disfigures his body, changes his entire personality, and forces him into a job he doesn't want.
The Santa Curse is actually the fake name given to this movie at the end of the honest trailer for it.
Is it actually?
Yeah.
I'm genuinely not seeing it. It's funny because I a little peek behind the curtain here, Chris. I've been resisting watching. A couple of years ago, we were going to do this, and it didn't work out. We ended up, I don't know, I can't remember. I think the Rewind reviews just didn't line up with Christmas enough for it to be 3, so we didn't do it. And that year, I was like, phew, good job we didn't, because we literally, and I know we're going to split the audiences, so, it's not worth us doing. But the Weekly Planet, much more successful podcast and YouTube channel, they did on their Caravan of Garbage series, the Santa Claus movies. They did all 3. And I was really excited to listen to them, but knowing we hadn't done this yet, I did not watch. Because I didn't want to be accidentally, subconsciously, even if we do it a year or 2 later, repeating, things that had gone in and I'd agreed with. Because that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes you hear a thought, you agree with the thought, it goes in, and it long enough passes, it's your thought at a certain point. Do you know what I mean? I've definitely done that before, where I've heard an opinion that I've agreed with so strongly that 2 or 3 years later, I wouldn't necessarily know where it came from. So
I think every great opinion I've ever given on the podcast, like beyond 5 years ago, in your head is now your opinion.
Yeah, almost certainly. I mean?
Came from you. Yeah.
Almost certainly. But I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? If you forget where it came from, there's really no way to know. But my point is, I did not want to be subconsciously influenced. So I've not watched them. So I'm actually really looking forward to finishing this recording and finding out what the Weekly Planet had to say.
Nice.
But I've also not seen the Honest trailer because I'm not a huge Honest trailer guy. I dip in and out of those, like when it's something specific. I've not seen their Santa Claus ones, I don't believe. Unless I saw them so long ago I've forgotten. Which, again, wouldn't rule that out either. That's also, you never know, right? It might one day, maybe it just casually got recommended, watched it, didn't realise. And maybe, in fact, Chris, maybe that's where the Santa Curse came from. Maybe I didn't just have that as an original thought. Maybe that was somewhere in my subconscious, Chris.
Possibly. I'm trying to remember. So what have we done then? We've done Die Hard. We've done The Nightmare Before Christmas.
We did Gremlins and The Snowman.
Gremlins. We've done The Snowman, and we've done Jingle All the Way.
Did we do 2 of the year Jingle All the Way or just 1? Night Before Christmas was with Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, we named that though, but that is only 5 though. So there must be one.
Snowman, Gremlins, Night Before Christmas, Jingle All the Way, and then last year it was Die Hard and It's a Wonderful Life.
But what about Gremlins?
I just said
Was
Gremlins.
Gremlins not done at Christmas?
I just said Gremlins. Snowman, Gremlins. Dear Lord.
Yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas, Jingle All the Way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're at 4. Die Hard, It's a
Yeah.
Wonderful Life. 6.
Okay. I think I was just miscounted and heard Gremlins. I thought I'd said Gremlins, and then you said them all again, and then I said them again, or before you said them. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Snowman, Gremlins, Night Before Christmas, Jingle All the Way. What's further down the list? It's a Wonderful Life and Die Hard. Yeah, that's our 6. So we're doing
Cool.
So it will be on an uneven number this year, though, because we're doing a trilogy for Christmas, which we've never done before. So yeah,
No,
we're doing all
I mean,
three.
we really went quality last year, didn't we? Like, those are two hard Christmas movies to beat, aren't they?
I think there is a contender, but we've yet to do it, and it's probably what we'll do next year, or for my choice anyway.
What's the contender?
What's that, sorry?
What's the contender?
I think it's Muppets Christmas Carol.
Ah, right, yeah.
Because I think Muppets Christmas Carol might be the greatest adaptation of Christmas Carol. And I know to some people who will hear that statement and go, absolutely it is correct. And there are people who are going to hear that and be deeply offended. I don't feel like anyone's in the middle on that opinion.
Yeah. I've never seen it, which is a controversial thing.
Yes, well, it's going to be interesting because they're restoring it this year and putting the lost song back in, and I don't know if I care. Look, I forget the name of the song. It's a song they took out. They put it in the theatrical version, took it out for the VHS, TV, and DVD releases, and everyone's sad about it. It's been restored. It's going back on the Disney Plus version this year for Christmas, and I don't think I ever cared for that song, personally. So a lot of people are going to be very mad at me because people campaigned for years to get that song reinstated in the movie. I don't care for it. Sorry, everyone. But cool. So yeah, everyone will be very happy that it's everyone will be very happy it's back. I won't, but everyone else will be really happy.
For sure. Anyway, this year's Christmas movie is The Santa Claus. So Dan, what is your history, if any, with this film?
So I think like many kids around our age, this was for a long time the Santa Claus movie for us. Like, so there was a slightly older Santa Claus movie that was kind of like, one second, it's gonna kill me now. There was another, not the Santa Claus is in the Claus, but like a Santa Claus movie. Yeah,
it was called because that links into my story. Actually, it was just called The Santa Claus. But
right, okay, Santa Claus the movie, the one from 1985.
Yeah.
It's called Santa Claus the movie. I've got it up here. It starred Dudley Moore. David Huddleston was Santa Claus, and Dudley Moore played Patch, who I assume was like an elf or something, right? So that movie was the Santa Claus movie that was like on TV every year, and it was the most recent one. And it was like, by the time I was a kid, old enough to care about this stuff, I thought that movie was kind of lame. I don't remember enjoying it that much. I thought it was fine. And then this was like. I remember. I think I saw the trailer for this movie before I saw this movie, like on the front of another VHS maybe or something. I can't remember. I don't think I saw this one in the cinema. I think I saw the trailer for this movie on a VHS as an upcoming release for the VHS of the Santa Claus, and was blown away. I was like, oh man, it's a new, funny, hip Santa Claus movie. It's kind of got like, I didn't say this out loud or think this directly, but I think subconsciously it's got like that Jim Carrey vibe, like not like exactly like Liar Liar, but like a movie where you've got the guy transforming and there's going to be lots of silly jokes about that. Like, because the trailer had a lot of like, him, the beard growing back, growing the weight, being interrogated by the police and being like, Papa Gijo, doing all the silliness. Like, they really focused in on Tim Allen being wacky in the trailer. Now, the movie isn't really that, I think, in the end, but that's certainly what my memory of the trailer was. And I remember being really excited. I was like, a cool, interesting, new Santa Claus movie. And when it came out, I immediately rented it, loved it. It's not quite the movie they promoted, but I don't even think I noticed that as a child because those scenes are technically in the movie, right? So it's but I just remember thinking it was a really interesting take on the character. Like, it was interesting because it was new. It was like Mother, it was a very interesting take on the character and mythos of Kris Kringle. I didn't think that, but like I could tell it was different, right? I could tell it was like modern. I knew it was unlike any other version of the story. Normal guy becomes forcibly Santa, through comedic, hijinks, and all that stuff. So I really liked it. I connected to it. I liked that. I had a lot of good Christmas feelings associated with it. And then over the years they did sequels, which we're going to get to. But for context now, the reason this movie isn't a staple for me these days, and I know it is for you, Chris, but the reason this movie isn't I watch it every year is because of the sequels. Because I love this movie, and I watched this movie a lot as a kid, and I remember the sequels both put a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth as a kid. I didn't enjoy either of them. I thought both of them were kind of nonsense, and I just remember, like, it kind of weirdly tarnished this this movie for me. And I stopped going back to it as often, and I don't remember the last time I saw this movie, and I was quite surprised at how much of this movie I had forgotten. I remembered stuff as we got to it, like it was like I was seeing the road, a few meters ahead, but not like before we sat down to do Cool Runnings the other day. I would have named you the Buckingham Palace scene. I would have named you the shot of them putting the bobsled over their shoulder and walking through. If you'd have asked me about this movie, I'd have been like, well, he gets out of bed and he's got a lot of weight and he shaves his beard and then it immediately grows back. That's like, I know, and Santa falling off the roof initially. Oh, and him going down the chimney being all squeezed. That's about my memory of this movie. But as I started watching it, I'm going, oh, that's right. He puts on the suit and that's kind of what does the thing. Oh, that's right. He gets captured and the little elves fly out to save it. Like, I was remembering bits as we were getting to them. Like, I was putting it together. Like, when he goes into the office, I'm like, oh, that's right. Santa in a tank. I parts of this movie came back to me as I watched it. But it's clearly been a very long time since I saw it. But yeah, big love for this film as a kid. Again, tarnished by its sequels, but I know you have a much different experience with this. Not much different in that your love for this maintained through the years. So I'll be very curious to hear about where it started and how it's grown.
Yeah, which is almost kind of what I remember more than anything. I don't think I can pinpoint the first time I watched this movie. One thing I can pinpoint, vividly remember, is we used to do this thing, which on reflection was just them scrambling for something to do. But in primary school, every year before the Christmas holidays, we'd all sit in the hall as an entire school and watch a film. I remember watching Pete the Magic Dragon, the original Pete the Magic Dragon. I remember watching that very clearly. Yes. And I remember sitting down, and the Santa Claus had only just come out. I don't know if I'd seen it by then. I don't think I had. I don't know for sure, but it had come out, and it comes on the screen, Santa Claus, and everyone's the hall comes alive. Everyone's sitting on a hard surface, cross-legged for 2 hours. Everyone's pumped. Everyone's like, I can't believe it. Oh my God, it's the Santa Claus. Oh my God. And even in my head, even back then, I'm thinking, I'm not sure this has been out long enough to have been converted into whatever they're using. Like, do you know what I mean? Just part of me just knew, but I'm like, but maybe it is. Like, this is the dream. And it wasn't the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. It was the Dudley Moore. It was the Dudley Moore John Lithgow movie. And I remember getting sucked in. And I remember, watching it and enjoying that movie. But part of me still ached for the Santa Claus. Now I did then watch it as a kid and love it as a kid and enjoy it as a kid. And I don't know if because of that experience at school, the movie then elevated in my subconscious and mind, but I would just always refer to it as my favourite Christmas film. And, I don't know if that is necessarily true, because obviously things like, Die Hard exist and there's others that I love. Well, it's probably Die Hard or the Santa Claus, for sure. But it's very hard to put this above Die Hard when I say Die Hard because I think Die Hard is a perfect movie. And I think Die Hard is also one of the most rewatchable movies in the world. If not the. And at uni, I brought the DVDs and watched them all that year. And I think that was the first time I'd ever seen the third one. I think I'd seen the second one, but that was the first time seeing the third one. So I had the DVDs, and then so I watched them at uni, and then I watched them again a couple of years later, and then basically Jess and I started watching them every year and have done that for... Well, I think 7 years. I think like the entire time maybe we've been together, we've done that. And it is really amusing because it is diminishing returns. Like those movies do not get better, but I get a real kick out of it, and I get a real nostalgia buzz with this movie. And it is weird because, like I say, I can't pinpoint the first time I ever saw it. My most vivid childhood memory of this movie is the school thing. And maybe there's a psychological impact there. But yeah, no, I definitely loved this movie as a kid and have continued to watch it.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, isn't it, that you created that tradition? Because for me, I can't imagine a worse fate than having to watch the sequels every year. Like I honestly, I would quite happily watch this movie every year. This one that we'll watch today. I think, we'll get to it in a minute. We'll crack on with like the full review or whatever. But for my money, this is a really good Christmas movie on its own. It's got problems, which we'll talk about, but it's breezy, it's funny. Tim Allen's very charming. Against like the script, he somehow makes it charming, even though bit of a bad person to start with, to say the least. I would not criticize anyone for watching this movie every year, especially because it's so short. But all three of them, man, that's a commitment. I especially because the others ain't great. Real surprise that you managed that.
I think that's just part of the fun, like sitting through the others, and also like the others, because I'm sure when you watch them and we review them, we're going to talk about all the madness and all the bad things. But once you're used to that, it just becomes the fun of watching a bad movie to be like, what the fuck is going on? Right. What is happening here? And it's just become a fun tradition. But I'm quite a completionist. Like, we watch Die Hard every year as well. And part of me always aches to then go on and watch the other four. And that truly would be painful.
Because
arguably worse.
Two's not great. Four's not.
Well, I like
okay.
two, but yeah. I actually, to be fair, I don't mind any of those. I rewatched 4 like the other week. A couple of weeks ago, I had the day to myself and was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna put on Die Hard 4.
Die Hard 4's the one with like Justin Long, right?
Yeah, Die Hard 4's the one with Justin Long. So for me personally, the only truly horrendous one is the 5th one, which is fucking garbage.
I'm not a huge fan of the second, so
No.
I love the third one though. I think the third one's great. Like, we're gonna have to tackle that at some point on here, and I think that's a great part. I think it's a great movie, so I'm looking forward to going back to that. I've not watched it in a few years, so that'll be interesting. That's kind of our history with the film. You watch it every year, Chris, with a sort of casual, it's Christmas, let's do the tradition. What was your experience going into it with a critical eye, with the intent of analysing? Because we've talked about this a lot in the past. It does change how you view a movie. Sitting down and watching a movie for yourself and sitting down and watching a movie for this podcast are two different things. Because if you have to talk for an hour and a half or an hour or whatever it is, for 3 hours if it's a Harry Potter movie, about the thing, then you want to have a lot of thoughts. You want to make sure you're paying attention. You want to make sure you're taking it in and not just being, especially for a film like this, a fan, but also being able to acknowledge that it might have flaws and find those flaws and talk about those flaws. So, what was your experience watching it this time with that in mind?
No different really to normal, especially because but I suppose with a bit more focus on the areas that are there. Like, one, we've been doing, I've watched this at Christmas now, 3 years worth of us doing Rewind reviews, and knowing that it would come up on Rewind reviews at some point, but I guess I'm zeroing in on the things which are wrong with it, which are some of the obvious things like fat shaming and that stuff, which we will get to. But I think the big flaw that I notice every year, but I think this year I really zeroed in on, because it was like, oh god, I kind of try to approach this viewing as, if I've never seen this before, what would I be talking about? And I mean, the answer to that is the third act, and how it sort of descends into madness, but also Tim Allen's switch to believing it just comes out of nowhere. Like, they really don't embed that in, and they could. And then everyone else's switch into believing it is just as bizarre. And sort of the film loses the best bit of the film is sort of the beginning and the middle. I'd argue the middle. That's sort of the stuff I remembered as a kid as well. I didn't really remember the claws stuff. Do you know what I mean? The North Pole stuff. I mainly remembered Tim Allen sort of becoming and rallying against himself, becoming Santa. And I think the third act has a lot of problems. And it ends they wrap up the Charlie of it all in 3 different ways within the space of 15 minutes of each other. It's really, that third act really needs some script editing. So yeah, it was that stuck out more than ever in this viewing, but that isn't something I've not noticed before. It's just I was concentrating on those things, I guess, a bit more in this viewing.
Yeah, I think it's tricky, isn't it? Because you've got a movie. I mean, I guess I do have a big question for you as someone who watches this movie all the time, right? Because I come into it this time, as I mentioned, not really remembering as much of it as I thought, sort of figuring it, like remembering bits just like 2 minutes before they come up, with the one very overriding thought that I want to ask you about. Is Scott Calvin on a character arc, or is the magic, the clause, or curse, as I've jokingly put it, changing his personality? Because I think it's hard to understand with this movie, based on the evidence the movie provides, whether he's changing himself or if it's the magic of being Santa now. Because like things like suddenly he wants to eat sweets and milk and drink milk and eat cookies all the time feels like that's part of the curse. That's a personality change. It's making him a different person, behave differently, make different choices. So is it satisfying to get to the end of a movie and have one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie? Well, it's two favorite scenes, but they're connected. Is that when he sees the little girl, Christmas number 1, and is kind of rude to her because he's really not happy to be there, and then he comes back the second year, and he's fully Santa now, and he's lovely and he treats her nicely, and she went to the effort of remembering that he claimed he was lactose intolerant, so she gets him soy milk. It's one of the best written scenes in the movie, top to bottom, both of them together. The first one's really funny, the second one's a really sweet payoff. But I can't help but feeling a tinge of, but did they earn this? Did this character actually grow? And if not, that's kind of horrific. He was forced to be a different person by magic. We talked about when we did Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Grindelwald, how fucked up it was that Queenie had Jacob under that spell. Here we are again with another character whose whole personality is being changed by magic, and I just don't know how I feel about it. So yeah, it's a very long-winded way to ask this question.
I think that links into my point as well, because that's, unfortunately, the way the movie presents it, that's the only reading, in a way, the curse stuff, because that's how you go, well, that's why he suddenly believes it, because, like, he's experiencing the magic, and then Charlie shows him the snow globe, and that's a visual representation of it, so he believes it, because it's hard to fight things like, because there's the physical stuff which he's rallying against, but it's things like the reason you kind of go, well, is it the magic of Christmas taking over him? Is things like the fact that his heartbeat changes to jingle bells, the fact that he is suddenly remembering.
Honestly, if I could cut anything from this movie, it's that. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I think it's funny enough. Especially if you're a kid.
Yeah,
he's remembering the list off by heart and referencing people. They use it for a slightly dodgy pervert joke, but anyway. And then also the kids queue up, and at first he's like, no, I don't want anything to do with this, and he's turning away from the girl, but then he ends up letting them all sit on his lap and telling him what he wants for Christmas. So he sort of gets sucked into the magic of it. So my read on it is that he personally changes, but what the movie presents us is that the magic, the curse, the clause, whatever you want to call it, is the thing that changes him.
Yeah, and do you think you're reading it that way out of like your personal preference, like you'd prefer it was a character arc?
Fuck yeah. That's what I just said. Yeah, that's what I mean by I would like to read it that way, and I choose to read it that way, but what the movie presents us is that it's the clause, etc.
Yeah, and that's where I fall down with it, because I really like this movie. I think this is a really good movie, and if you are just willing to watch it without thinking about any of it too hard, and I hate when people say that, 'cause it's not really fair. You should be able to think about a thing and it not fall apart immediately. Like when someone says, just don't think about it. I'm just like, let's know that what you're saying there is ignore the flaws, and I don't think.
Yeah, but to be fair though, if there's an exception to that, it's nostalgic Christmas movies. Sure, do you know what I mean? or like I think nostalgic movies in general, I think there's a degree of you can watch and not think about them if you're partly watching them to take yourself back to the place you were.
As a viewer, you absolutely can, but as somebody wanting to review it for a podcast with a critical eye, you can't. Like if you actually wanna unbiasedly judge a thing, you have to divorce it from that.
Yeah.
There's no
yeah.
other
Oh
way.
yeah.
You know, and if someone jumps on Twitter and says, Santa Claus is my favorite movie, I love it to bits and all this stuff, and I just go, yeah, that's fine. Like you are absolutely, as an individual watching a thing, allowed to just turn your brain off and watch it. But I don't think that's a defense when someone critically observes that the thing has flaws. And that's what I was criticizing. Was like, I do think often, even like with not movies like this, like I've heard it recently about Thor: Love and Thunder. Now I happen to enjoy Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't think it's a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I had a really good time with it. And a lot of people didn't like it, and that's fine. They're allowed to not like it. But I've seen people who I technically agree with because they enjoyed the movie saying, "Switch your brain off, just enjoy it. Stop being so picky." And I'm like, no. These criticisms may not have bothered you, but a response isn't just ignore them. That's not a valid retort to a criticism. So it's hard with a movie like this because I think when being objective, there is many elements of this movie that do not work on paper or in practice, maybe.
For sure.
But I can't deny the fact that even when watching it as objectively as I was able to, having been a fan of this film as a kid, I came away going, yeah, none of them are a big enough problem to distract from the charm of this film. I don't think.
No, because I think it's charming, and I absolutely agree with all of that. And absolutely, I said before even watching it this time that I think even on the last podcast, or maybe the Harry Potter ones when we brought up Santa Claus, I was like, I'm not sure the first one's going to hold up as well as you think it might. Like I fully admit this film's flaws. I think one strength it has is it's charming and entertaining on a number of different levels. There are jokes here for kids that are going to make the kids laugh, and there are jokes that are designed to make the adults laugh as well. Like one of my favourite ones is when they're busting away into the night sky, having just done the deliveries, and Tim Allen just yells, in the morning, I'm getting a CAT scan. Like, that just really makes me laugh every time. And I think there are a lot of jokes aimed at both audiences, which is one of the film's strength. Some of those jokes have not aged well at all.
I mean, and one of them is basically immediate as well. I think the Christmas party where Santa's got his receptionist on his lap, and they make a joke about that. Didn't like that. Immediate, just snuck that in straight away. 2 seconds.
One of the first jokes. Yeah.
All I wanted to do was just hear that Disney do 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 under that. It's like, wait a minute. It's a family picture, for the family. Ouch. But other than that, there are a few. There's as you pointed out earlier, there's the one where he sort of catcalls the lady a little bit, which is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form.
Well, also it's the fat shaming element of it as well.
And then the fat shaming stuff. So he catcalls a lady, and then there's a series of scenes that are absolutely insane, where everyone is like, Scott, lose some weight, man. What are you doing? You're a mess, dude. Your life must be crumbling because you've put on some weight. Like, it's like, here's my thing. Okay, let me ask you. Let's talk about that scene. Let's just dissect that scene actually for a minute, because I've got some questions about this scene, and maybe you have the answers for me, Chris.
So I didn't write the movie. I just watch it every year.
But you maybe you've thought about it already and have come to some sort of conclusion. Right. Yeah, I'm not saying but you might have thought about this and identified the problem that I've missed. So the scene is, to my understanding, he goes in, he's becoming Santa now, so he's put on a bit of weight, he's got a bit of a beard. He's not full Santa yet, but he's on his way, okay? And it's one of the last scenes we see where he's doing his job, his old day job. At some point, I guess he just quits that and we don't see it, it's off screen, or he's fired, unclear. But anyway, he goes into the day job, right? And he's late. and he's wearing a tracksuit because he doesn't have none of his suits fit him anymore because he's put on some weight, and they're all looking him up and down like he's a lunatic. And then they're talking about the Christmas toys for the next year.
Well, we should say as well, put on weight overnight. Like he's not. This is like magic Santa Claus weight that's appeared overnight.
Right? Yes. Yeah. It's appeared in a very short space of time. They're all like, Scott, what happened? Which I guess is fair. And at first he claims it's a bee sting. But then he orders like a shit ton of food. Which, by the way, there's a really good joke in this. He asks for a salad, and then he wants cookie and a hot fudge sundae and all this stuff. And when they cut to the table later, the salad is still sat there uneaten. He's eaten everything else.
That's good.
That's a very subtle gag, but it's very good. I like that. There's a few little details in this movie that are really neat, but we'll come back to that. So the scene is they're all waiting to start the meeting, but he's ordered like 10 different things that are all sugary, and he's eating those, and they're all waiting. So first question. Wouldn't they have just started the meeting? Like I've had meetings like this where people are trying to cram lunch in around it because the day has been a bit chaotic. People just eat and talk. It's fine. No one's sitting around and waiting for the guy to finish his food. They're just gonna have their conversation, right? I don't see the. It's funny for the joke, but I don't really get that. But okay, then the guy starts presenting the thing for Christmas, right? The campaign for Christmas. Now, presumably, the point of the meeting is that the guy is going to present, and then they're going to discuss it. So why is everyone outraged when Scott points out holes in it? Why is it so scandalous for him to have an opinion on the campaign? He has another idea. Oh, maybe we shouldn't be going at it this way. Santa in a tank. What we should be doing is thinking about toys that do this. That's his job, isn't it? I don't understand. Isn't his job to guide that stuff?
I assume it's so. One, I mean, you weren't asking for a defense for this, but you could. I can't believe I'm just literally defending for the sake of defending. I don't.
No. I want to hear if you can make sense of it, because this scene in general could confuse me a lot. Like I didn't really understand. I knew what they were going for, but the logic of it, there was holes.
So the lunch thing. Completely agree. I have been in meetings like that, but I have also been in meetings, especially pitch or creative stuff, where it's been like, the meeting starts at lunchtime, let's get lunch out of the way, let's catch up, let's do the personal stuff while we eat, and then get down to the work stuff when that's finished. So could be the dinner thing. I assume it's because he's so clearly, the first scene sets up that he's so ruthless in his approach, and it's all about marketing and getting the money and all of that stuff. And he's not a great dude for home life, because at work he spends all his time there and is whatever. And I think the way people interact with him and stuff, I think it's the reason they react so negatively to his opinion is because it's so out of left field and out of character for him. It's so like, what the fuck? Like, this is the kind of thing you should be giving your stamp of approval on, and we'll be getting going. Like, where is this coming from? Like, it's not in the company etiquette for him to have a problem with this. Is my read on the scene in that sense. Okay,
and then as a man, Chris, that works in a sort of seniorish position, you've got people underneath you. You have employees. As a boss, Chris, would you feel it's acceptable to encourage an employee to see a dietitian?
Oh God, no! Oh Jesus, no! I'm not defending that element of the scene. Fucking hell! I was answering your pitch interrupting question. No, the fat shaming is
I'm adding
horrific.
I said I had several questions about this scene. This is my next one.
That is very much unacceptable. It is that classic. Look, and I'm not defending this at all. Sure. It's that classic. We talked about this the other week with Cool Runnings. It's that classic. This is not acceptable now and should not have been acceptable then. Unfortunately, it was acceptable then. Like, just a few years after this, what is this, 94? Mm-hmm. Like, there is 10 years worth of unacceptable fat jokes in Friends that come after this. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's so funny how I was on a list the other day. I saw it was I don't remember if it was BuzzFeed or something else, but someone did every episode of Friends ranked list, and all the bottom ones were bottom because of scenes like, so the one that could have been, which is considered to be quite a good episode by many, on this list was right near the bottom, and it was right near the bottom for the scene at the end of what if Joey had married Monica and they're both overweight and that's why it was put to the bottom. And I'm not saying that's wrong because as I just said, that stuff was not acceptable now, is not acceptable now, and was not acceptable then. Unfortunately, it did happen though. Unfortunately, at the time, it was considered acceptable. That's horrendous, but it's that discussion we've had plenty of times on here of, how much do you... Yeah, it's weird. Because also, isn't it weird how it comes in degrees of things? Because, like, we're sat here now going, and we've both said degrees of, that's horrific, but you'd still recommend the film. The film is still charming. But then other films with other things, I'd be like I've never seen 16 Candles, but I'm pretty sure if we watched that, it would be like, nah, it's not that. Whether it was acceptable at the time is irrelevant. Like, the movie suffers as a result. Do you know what I mean? Like, And I haven't seen 16 Candles, so maybe that's just from what I've heard about it. So maybe I'm putting that on that unfairly. I don't know. I've not seen the film. But do you know what I mean? Like, some films, isn't it weird how some things you go, well, that was acceptable at the time, and other things you're like, nah, doesn't matter. Fuck this movie.
Yeah, I don't know where that line is. I don't know if it's in execution or something, because we've had different answers to that thought multiple times across this podcast. There was stuff in Dumb and Dumber where we were just like, nah, fuck this movie. We've got all this here, and like I said, I think I think it's horrendous that all the jokes about his weight, and I actually, to be honest with you, I think there are a couple of jokes about his weight that are like okay too, like, where the doctor is like, what do you eat? And he goes, cookies. And the doctor's like, well, there you go, just cut back on the sweet. Like, that's a very casual, right? If someone is asking about their weight for health reasons and the doctor goes, just cut back on the sweets, that's fine. It's a joke, but it's like, it's light, it's very,
it's specifically
unjudgmental.
Because in that circumstance in the script, he's gone to the doctor about it, and the doctor is answering him in doing his job. There is also that great one where, and again, it's because in the context of the scene, it's advice, but it's the bit where he talks about the beard, and the doctor goes, well, you could always dye it. And then he looks at his stomach and goes, and you should dye it.
Yeah, right.
It's a funny joke. It's a play on words. The difference is, in the scene we were like talking about, the
boardroom
scene.
Yes.
The boss is going, you've put on weight, what's wrong with you? And that's
he's literally he says, look at you, you're a mess, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he's like, and as he's leaving, he's like, get yourself together and see a dietitian. Like, what? Yeah. It's insane. So, I'm not 100% sure. I'm still not really 100% sure the movie sells me on why him having an opinion on the toys is a scandal. I guess my only potential explanation for that is if the guy is pitching, maybe save your thoughts till the end instead of interrupting the guy, I guess. Is that maybe it?
But also, why is this scene in the movie? Like, this scene, other than, I guess, to represent how he's changed from a work perspective, and that adds to how he's changed
to see
as
how
a
it's
whole.
affecting his life, right? It's
I think
you need a scene like this. Maybe not this exact scene, because as I said, I find the context of this rather confusing. I think maybe they should have called the guys who wrote Big to write this scene, because they were real good at doing those scenes where, like, someone in a work environment behaving weirdly and the characters around them are reacting and trying to handle it. You need something a bit more playful, I think, than quite as suddenly nasty as this. I don't see any reason why these people turn on him the way they do.
Well, I think the part of the problem is, so I've just gone back to check what it is, and in the opening scene, when I'm going to call him Father Time, because in the next two movies that actor plays Father Time.
So I found this out. I was looking at the trivia and it said this. It says he comes back to play Father. So is he supposed to be? So for those who don't know, this movie does a few really interesting things. One of them is it hides elves throughout the movie. There's an elf in Denny's before any of the magical Christmas stuff happens. They just hide magical stuff throughout the movie.
And there's an elf looking in the window of Scott's car goes past and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
and then my favourite one is when they're in the classroom, and it's you bring your parent to school to tell us about their job day, whatever that is. When the kid says, or when Charlie says, "This is my dad," he's Santa Claus. Every kid laughs except one. And if you close in on that kid has pointy ears. So there's an elf hidden. There's elves hidden in tons of scenes. Really clever, a bizarre level of attention to detail. This movie does not necessarily need, but I like it. I approve of it. There are a few other small details we'll talk about later. But so my question is, in a movie with that level of thought put into it.
Hold on, because we've moved.
I'm bringing us back to that. I'm bringing us back to Father Time. So in a movie with that level of detail, is the Father Time thing intentional? Is he supposed to be Father Time, like watching over Calvin, the same way we have elves throughout the movie? Or
no, I don't think. I think it's just using the actor again. I think.
Oh, that's disappointing.
there's no. To my memory, there's no reference at all.
That's
to it.
Insane. That's insane. Cast a different actor. I like this actor. He's charming. Sure, I get it. You want to bring him back, but you can't give him a different role. He's done. He's in your movies.
Maybe there's a reference. We'll have to see next week. I've not ever paid too much attention to that. But maybe.
That's so disappointing.
Going back to the toy thing. So I've just rewound to the beginning, and Father Time says it's the best year ever, thanks to the do it all for you, Dolly. And then there's this doll made of ice, right? Which we can't really identify. It looks like just a doll. Now, I think the problem is if they found in that opening scene an equivalent toy to what they're suggesting for Santa Claus. So, like, it's a wholesome dolly, but it's also like a biker chick or designed to sell cigarettes. Or do you know what I mean? So, something that echoes the notion of what they're trying to do with the tanks and Santa Claus. If they'd have done that in the opening scene and attributed it to Scott, suddenly this later scene makes a lot more sense because you're going, well, he's completely contradicting who he normally is. And that, helps everything, I think. That helps justify their anger when he interrupts. That helps justify them being like, what is going on with you? Like, I think that small change, if the toy at the beginning is something of a similar vein, it then helps that scene, but that's not there, so it's a troublesome scene.
Yeah, so because there's two ways to fix it. Yeah, you either go down that route and sort of establish poor morality, so that when he's trying to bring in nicer morality, they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude? That's we want Santa in a tank or whatever." The problem is it's all muddled anyway, because in the scene it's like, it's not really clear that he's got an issue with because it's a Santa thing as well. It's confused because you're like, is he just complaining because it's not even a question of the morality, but just accuracy because he knows Santa now? So it's all muddled anyway. So it's never very clear. I think the easier fix than all of that even is just to be like, Scott, can you be quiet? Let him finish his, stop interrupting the man while he's doing his presentation questions at the end. Yeah. So then he's removed from the scene because he's interrupting and causing a disturbance while the guy is trying to do his presentation. Because I guess that is a more reasonable way to play it, right? That's a thing that somebody could be removed from a meeting for. Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah.
What do you think? Because was it a surprise to you how big a plot the Charlie of it all is, like, and the Charlie's belief in it, and how that causes a wedge between Scott and Charlie's mum. Like, so much of the movie is about Charlie's relationship with him being Santa. Did that, as someone who's not seen it in years, did that surprise you? Did you remember that? What was your response?
It's a really interesting question, and I kind of wish I'd been able to sort of check in on my thoughts on it prior to sitting down to watch it, because I don't, because obviously now I've seen it. Like, I'm going, it's the center of the movie. I assume I remembered that, but maybe I didn't. I suspect maybe I didn't quite understand the degree, because I remember that the kid believes. I did remember that the kid believes, and the ex-wife and new husband or whatever Judge Reinhold's character is to Neil. Laura and Neil's position in this movie I remembered vaguely, because I for some reason, actually, I tell you what, one thing I did remember about this movie before sitting down to rewatch it, I always remember, because it bugs the shit out of me to this day, the scene where they talk about the gifts they never got, and the payoff of them getting those gifts. I hate it. I hate it every time, Chris.
Really? I like that.
So I think the payoff is fine if the beginning makes sense, but the problem is, what did they do to not get their gifts? Because this is a world, Chris, where Santa's real. Did Santa die that year? What happened? Were they naughty that year?
Well,
what? That's the other, because that raises the other question of, if all these adults don't think Santa's real, but he is, where do they think the fucking presents are coming from?
Yeah. So, well, this is
there's a kayak in our living room now. I think I bought that probably, right? Do they just think they bought it? What's happening?
This is one of like the area. Well, this is the problem in any sort of thing with Santa Claus in. But I think the fansplaining explanation, and one thing I like about this movie is how much effort it goes to explain typical Santa questions, such as chimneys and how long it takes and all of that stuff. I really like that element of the film. I think that's a lot of fun.
Well, I will say, very quickly, Chris, because you hit on it. When I was a kid, I was disappointed by the way they explained the chimney thing. Because when I asked my parents that question as a young child, the answer they gave me was that he had a magic key. So if a house doesn't have a chimney, he's still in through the front door.
Not as visually interesting for the film, is it? But
No. But like when your parents tell you that at the age of 3, 4, whatever, however old I was when I asked, to get a bit older, see this movie and not have that canonized was personally upsetting. Even though I accept that's no one's fault but my own.
Well, no, I'd blame your mum and dad. To be fair,
yeah, mum and dad, be more imaginative. Have him squeeze down and make a chimney appear, like Tim Allen in the Santa Claus.
They should have been like, sorry, can we just hold on a second, Dan? Hello, is that Hollywood? Yeah. Just out of interest, are you making a Santa Claus movie? You are? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Really? The guy from Home Improvement? Oh, okay, fine. Listen, how are you going to explain chimneys?
Robin Williams not free this week?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's just we got a kid. He's fucking obsessed with renting videos off his nan. So at some point he's going to see this and check. Okay, cool. So,
I know it's a very personal thing, but as a kid, that did genuinely disappoint me. And even I think by the time I saw this movie, I'm well aware Santa's not real, but it doesn't matter because like I have a canon in my head for the rules. You know,
calm the fuck down.
It's just funny, isn't it? How when it doesn't match up, that upsets you, even if you know it's nonsense anyway.
Yeah. I think the explanation in the movie for that, and the explanation in general for that is like last week, magic tree. Magic of Christmas. Either what you said, they see the presents and they think they bought them, or the presents that Santa leaves get so tied in with the other presents that the parents don't notice or just assume, like, who'd they get that from? Oh, that must have been like great Auntie Jane or something like that. You know, it's all part of the magic of Christmas.
Well, what about... Okay, so on that point, what about... Like, there's clearly a puppy being delivered at one point.
That's a stray.
It's a stray with a bow on under the tree?
Yeah, it's Christmas, isn't it?
I just feel like... Also, that's a big responsibility to dump on a family that don't necessarily want a dog. I'm just saying.
The magic of Christmas makes the parents think they got the dog.
But again, this is a curse. It's a horrible thing. Look, a dog is a big decision for a family because the kid isn't going to be able to properly look after the dog. You get the dog for the kid, but you as an adult have to food, vets bills. You might not be able to afford a dog. And even if you can afford a dog, you might not have the time to walk it and look after it properly. You can't force a dog on a family and then magic them into thinking they bought it.
But it's a Santa movie. If this is going to bother you, you should never watch any movie where Santa Claus is a real... What about Claus? There's all these same issues in Claus, Dan, and you love that movie.
No, these issues don't exist in Claus. Because it's a world where Santa is real and everyone knows he's real. The problem here is all the adults don't believe.
Right, yeah.
And I'm saying, how can you not believe when shit is showing up under your tree every year? I
see what you're saying.
And then we go back to my original question of, what, was there some sort of renegade dickhead Santa 10 years ago that just didn't give anyone what they wanted? Like, why did these two stop believing because they didn't get the present they wanted? Because the implication is supposed to be, oh, their parents couldn't afford it, they couldn't do it. But I'm like, Santa's real in this world. We've canonically made Santa real. So what's the explanation for that?
magic of Christmas. At some point, psychologically, deep down, that Santa knew that eventually they would need those gifts at a later time in their life to prove the existence of Father Christmas.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I know, and it's also not the movie's explanation. It's me answering you with an explanation.
And it's a shame because you're right. I think the moment at the end, and Judge Reinhold plays it so well when he gets his little weenie whistle, and he goes, "My weenie whistle!" Like, it's so good. And they even apparently, I found this out in the trivia. The little jingle they play when she gets her mystery date game is from the mystery date advert. Again, this movie's attention to detail is maddening for a kids' film like this. I don't know why anyone paid that much attention. Like anyone was going to watch that scene and go, "Why didn't they play the mystery date theme tune from the advert?"
Maybe
Kids
because
there's a list.
There's a list in this movie, so maybe they were on the naughty list.
Do you think that's what it was?
No, I don't know. I think it's a script error. But I'm just
That's the problem. Is I really like the payoff, but I can't help but be annoyed by it every time because I don't understand why they didn't get their presents.
Why didn't they get their presents?
And if the idea is every adult, because this is a movie as well of like sweeping judgments on everyone. Like if one, this is a great joke, but you know, it just says something about the world these movies exist in. If one crappy dad burns a turkey, then hundreds of crappy dads have burnt turkeys, and they've all gathered at Denny's. All the divorced dads have done the exact same thing. So
Yeah.
in a world where that's true, and two people are discussing when they stop believing in Santa, and both their stories are, "I didn't get the gift I wanted, so I stopped believing," it's not a giant leap to think that most people had that experience. And that's why they all stopped believing in Santa. So then that's a wider question. And I know I'm filling stuff in based on implications, and you know, but then what happens here? What's happened to the rest of the people, Chris? Is everyone stopped believing in Santa for the same reason? Like, eventually Santa just goes, "You're old enough now. You're not going to get what you want, and you'll stop believing in me. Fuck you." Like, what? Is that the rule? At a certain point, Santa just stops bringing you gifts?
So basically, Dan, a lot of people, not what you were just saying about the gifts, but a lot of people have asked this on Reddit, right? So it looks like the most popular answer.
Wait,
is...
I'm not the only sado that has this issue with this movie.
No. I've got 6 tabs up of people asking it on Reddit.
Oh my God.
So in the Santa Claus, maybe that Santa wasn't as great. In the Santa Claus 2, the elf Bernard says that Scott is the best Santa they've ever had, and productivity and satisfaction has never been higher. It stands to reason that not all Santas were as good at the job, and seeing how there are so many ways to lose the Santa gig, fall off a roof, not get married, evil Jack Frost, I'd imagine there's a new Santa in training fairly often. So there's that. There's
Okay.
Lots of people asking that. Santa magics the parents into thinking they brought it is an answer just because someone asked a similar question to you.
Sure.
Scott Calvin is an unusually lenient Santa. Previous Santas have always used the naughty list as an excuse to do less work. Not necessarily the one Scott watched die, but others. Robotic Santa was a good example. So there is probably likely a Santa who 30 years ago only delivered to a handful of kids. Most other kids not getting a Santa gift lost faith. And there's another answer, which I won't read out, basically saying you don't get the gifts when you stop believing. And because they were on the verge of not believing that year, that's why they didn't get the gift they truly want. Which is pretty dark.
That's a little dark, but I'm okay with that, I think. But the movie would need to explain it. But yeah, I think that's okay. The idea that once you stop being a kid and believing in Santa, the presents don't show up no more because, you don't want to risk the thing we said earlier, present shows up under your tree. Where did this come from, But then again, wouldn't Santa be interested in people believing in him? He doesn't seem particularly interested in secrecy in this movie.
No. Jesus, no. No, he's all over the place, isn't he?
Yeah. He wants, if anything, he wants people to believe. So... I don't know.
When they believe is when they get the gifts.
Yeah.
Worth noting that as well.
Yeah, because actually you're right. That's actually a very good point. But they believe because they see it. This is that thing. So I've heard a few times, this is going to be a weird pull, but just bear with me a second. I promise that it's going somewhere. In the Christian faith, theoretically, no one really should be going to hell, right? Because God forgives. The Christian God always forgives, right? So you could live your life as a terrible person to a point, I think. I think they're very clear that, mass murder and things like that, you're probably too far gone. But the theory is, right, God forgives all sins, right? So if you are a terrible person your whole life, you're rude to people, you're mean, you're greedy, you're sinful in all the other ways that you can be, right? You get to heaven, you die, you go to the gates, and God's like, I'm here. What do you got to say for yourself? And you say, I'm sorry, which of course you would. You now realize you were wrong your whole life and you should have been acting morally because God stood in front of you. You get to go in anyway, right? In you go. The only people who go down to hell in that faith are the ones who still deny even after that and are like, I don't believe, or fuck you, or I'm not sorry. Those people are going to hell, right? So in this, they see Santa with their eyes. That's the problem. Like, of course, anyone who sees, literally is confronted by the big man himself, like, what have you got to say for yourself, is going to go, oh shit, it turns out your faith was correct and I should have believed it the whole time, I'm very sorry. Yeah, not a big leap, right? So are we saying Santa is working on God rules? I mean, they've seen him flying around in a reindeer, now they believe. Oh, now you believe. I guess that's fine. Now you've seen it with your own eyes. Not based on actual faith, but because you've physically seen a reindeer fly. Here's your presents, I guess.
Well, maybe it's something to do with the difference between, children and adults. The children don't need to see Santa to have that belief, but adults do. I don't know. We've gone down a really strange path.
Well, no, it's one of those things that's bothered me every single time I saw this movie since I was a kid. I always remember thinking, why didn't they get their presents? But I actually, you know what though? I actually like the idea that being Santa Claus isn't a guarantee of every kid getting gifts. And that some Santas more efficient than others, got to more houses than others. So some kids went without, some kids went with. I actually kind of like that. Like that actually, if they canonize that, I'd be like, yeah, that works.
Yeah, but like you say, I mean, the flaws still exist in the movie. It's not in the movie. That's
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Speaking of stuff that comes up every time, because a big thing with this movie is the notion of you gotta kill Santa to take over. But for me,
I don't think so, because they
well, this is what I'm just about to say. I think for me, they very deliberately include the shot of Santa waving to show, and him then disappearing magically to show that he hasn't died. In my opinion, do you agree? Is that what you were about to say?
No, that's not my reason. It's when he reads out the clause. It's 1 second. I wrote it down specifically for this exact point. 1 second.
Because it does always come up with this movie.
Yeah, I understand the concern. But 1 second. Oh dear, I'm trying to find it. Sorry. Here we go. Until such time as he is unable to do so by accident or design. That's in the Santa Claus, right? So he has to be Santa Claus until he's unable to do so by accident or design. Now, this Santa Claus went away by accident. That was he fell down and he moved on, right? Whatever you want to think about whether he actually died or not, doesn't matter. That's what happened. But there's an or design part in there, which does not preclude somebody choosing to move on and therefore finding a replacement, possibly the plot of the new movie, the new show, or retiring at a certain point in general, like just, like I'm too old to do this now, or, being bad at it and just being like, someone else should probably do this. Like, my choice is that someone else does it. I don't think it has to change hands through murder.
No, but a lot of people accuse him of murdering the Santa that falls off the roof. And I'm like, I think it's very clear that Santa's alive. And just like through accident is unable to do it anymore.
I think that Santa probably is dead, but I do think it's an accident. It's not a murder. Murder is deliberate, right? There's a guy on his roof. He yells at the guy. The guy happens to slip, and that sucks. And it's probably an accidental result of his yelling, but it's still an accident, isn't it? You wouldn't call it murder.
I just don't like to think of him killing Santa. I think Santa's injured, unable to continue, and he gets magicked away to a little bit, another bit of the North Pole where they take care of him, and he joins his own wife and children or whatever.
Nah, I reckon he's dead. I do genuinely think he's dead. I think he's dead, but I think you can read it anyway. Because to me, the waving is like I'm done. Like, I'm out. I'm about to die. Good luck.
That's so dark.
I mean, it's a dark movie. One of the first things he says when they're talking about what's the line about doing drugs in the 60s or something? There's a line about that. What is that? It's Oh, the kid says something like, "Oh, Dad, you're high." He goes, "It's okay, kid. I'm used to it. I lived through the 60s."
Yeah, that's what I mean. A joke for the adults.
Yeah, but it's a dark movie. It's.
Did you spot him picking up the tool belt?
Yes. Yeah, I did. Because he's from that show, everyone. Tim Allen's from a sitcom where he's just tools. Tool time.
What's another compliment you've got for the movie?
I genuinely think that the section in the middle where he assumes what he witnessed was a dream, because he very unfortunately, actually wanted to point this out very quickly. Bernard's a dickhead. I like the Bernard character on the whole, but this is a shitty choice. Scott falls asleep in the North Pole, and they make him wake up in his bed back home. What else do they think he's going to assume other than that it was a dream?
Yeah,
he's waking up in his own bed. You've given him an out. Don't give him an out. Let him wake up in the North Pole. Introduce him to the polar bear that's guiding traffic. Do you know what I mean? Let's not be cruel to this poor man, right? Let's make sure he knows it's definitely real, so that when he goes back to the real world, he has to do because he wastes. So Bernard says to him, "You've got 10 months to sort of get your affairs in order, and then you're here at Thanksgiving, and you're a Santa from that point on, right?" That's pretty reasonable. 10 months is a good amount of time to sort of get your shit together before you get dragged into this new job that you've been forced to do. But not if you're spend 9 months of it not believing that that's what's happening. It's cruel. But anyway, so the section of the movie where he no longer believes that's what happened and he dreamt it all, and the kid still believes in his heart that's what happened, that section of the movie is brilliant. It's so compelling because you know it happened as an audience member, but you understand why Tim Allen is assuming it didn't. And you feel the frustration for this poor kid who is running around telling everyone, "My dad's Santa." And everyone is laughing. No one believes him. It starts to put a divide between the family. And the more Santa-y he becomes, the more it seems like Scott is some sort of psychopath gaslighting his child into thinking he's Santa. It all just starts to get a bit devious and insipid. And it starts to feel... And you really... By the time Laura and Neil are applying to have his visitation removed, you kind of are on their side. Not literally, because you know they're technically wrong, but you do also fully appreciate why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that's a really big struggle for a script to balance, where you can convince me that it's reasonable for those two to do that and not basically be the villains of the movie, trying to take away Santa's visitation for his child, but they set it up in such a perfect way. The way they balance it all, it's really, really masterful, because you totally understand why the kid is like, well, he's Santa. I'm excited about that. If any kid finds out their dad is fucking Santa now, is going to start acting like that kid does. They just are. That's a huge thing, right? So his behavior makes perfect sense. Scott is slowly being cursed into Santa Claus, so he's starting to behave more Santa-y. Out of his control, he's growing a beard and weight and wearing red, it seems, and doing a lot of and a perfect example of, you mentioned earlier, is the scene at the park, right, when the little girl sits in his lap, which I'm so glad they didn't do. There's a joke there in a parent getting mad at him, and I'm glad they didn't do that. It's a family movie. I don't need that joke. I feel like they did a similar joke in Jingle All the Way. I was not happy, because remember there's the one where he's chasing the kid who's got the ball, and then all the parents and all the mothers treat him like he's some sort of child catcher and beat him with bags.
They all slap him with handbags and
yeah. There's room for that joke here somewhere. There's like an opportunity for it, and they don't take it. And thank you, screenwriters. But that scene is really, really effective because the minute you're enjoying the scene for the funniness of him not wanting to be Santa and then having a line of kids all in his lap because the kids somehow magically sense that he really is Santa somehow. I don't know how, but they do. And I'm fine with that. Christmas magic, whatever. I don't think that breaks logic in the way some of the other stuff does. But then when Neil and Laura show up, you know what that means immediately because it just looks like he's going insane and dragging his child with him. Any parent would behave the way they behave. That is a genuine concern for the psychological well-being of their child. That his dad is behaving like this.
It really is the best portion of the movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. And look, I love, to be honest with you, the only part of the movie I don't care for is the third act. I think the opening portion of the movie, where we have reluctant Scott Calvin first dragged into the world of Father Christmas, that's all fun too. I like that sequence very well. It's very A to B, but there's lots of good jokes, some fun moments, setups for stuff they pay off later on. I like that. And I like that, as you said earlier, I like all their explanations for the weird Santa stuff. I like that they're just like, he can eat a fireplace just appears and all that. Oh, when they're in the sleigh, there's time dilation. Cool, fine, whatever. Don't mind. All that's good. So I like the first section too, because it's very fun to see a very reluctant man dragged into it. Like the scene with the little girl when he like throws the doll down, or like when he's like pulling the kayak out of the bag and it's like falling over. All that stuff is gold. I love that stuff. I really do. But you're right. Like it's that scene that ends with the button of when I wake up, I'm getting a CAT scan. And then it's this whole section of the movie where he's slowly coming around to it, but it's like having this huge impact on his family life. And it just plays out in a really believable way. So it's super funny while being kind of sad. And I love that about that. It's really well thought out. We'll get to the third act in a bit. But I thoroughly agree with you. I think it is probably the best section of the movie. But I think the first two acts of this movie are basically perfect. Like, with some, gripes about the logic of the world aside, they're really good storytelling. I think he's a very compelling character. Scott Calvin. And I think he's like the perfect guy to have this happen to,
Yeah, it's not as tight as, say, Cool Runnings, but it's also a very tight script. Like, not much time in those first two acts is wasted. It's all set up for who he is, who Charlie is, what the relationship is. Like, in very few lines, you understand completely the relationship between him and his ex-wife and the new boyfriend and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the impact that's having on the kid too. Like when he describes Scott as having lashed out irrationally, and he's like, "Where did you hear that? Like you're a child." It's very good to get a sense of their dynamics so quickly.
Yeah, and even smart decisions like I know this is a tiny, tiny thing, but a lesser movie would have Scott drive to his ex-wife's house and be late to pick up Charlie from there. The decision for Scott to be late to get to his own house is just so much worse. Like, it's like, oh, come on, dude. You didn't even need to go anywhere but home, and you've not prepared dinner, and you've now burnt the turkey because you've not prepared anything because you didn't get home in time to do it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's so much sadder, the notion of Charlie just waiting in the car for his dad to turn up to his house, his own house. And, it's quite sweet that he's got his own room and all of that sort of stuff. Although it's that kind of classic, boy, they've got a lot of money, this family, like to have two massive houses, like both parents. But like,
they're very middle America, aren't they?
Yeah, very much so. But that's it's little touches like that, which are very clever script decisions, because there's a shorthand to the situation by having him be late to go to his own house where his son is waiting for him. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Well, that as a decision says a lot.
And then the son not wanting to stay. That scene breaks my heart, like, every time, truthfully. Like, that's awful. Hearing the son say, like, you're going to pick me up immediately tomorrow, right, Mum? I don't want to be here for a second more than I want to be, like...
Which, again, the difference between him then, where he's literally like, daybreak, you're going to be here, yeah? Like, it's upsetting. It's also funny, like, the fact that this kid is just like, no, seriously, like, the sun rises, you're here. But But the difference in Charlie the next morning after the magic of the North Pole, and suddenly he's happy and thrilled and talking about what an amazing night they had. And this Santa thing has undoubtedly brought them closer together in Charlie's head, which adds so much pathos and drama to what comes next.
Yeah, and I think the payoff, like the fact that this movie is really about him connecting with his son, and admittedly, like it's cheap. What, he didn't connect with his son; he had to become Santa to connect with his son. Like it's pretty extreme. Not many dads have the option to literally become Santa to please their child. But the way they do it, it's the teamwork that brings them together. Really, the movie makes sure you see lots of scenes of them interacting together in the sleigh. Doing it right, like especially the second year when they set up that Charlie helped. I forget the elf's name. Begins with Q. It's like Quentin or something, because the joke is Q 007. Ha ha ha. They've worked together to improve the sleigh, and he's like, "How could I do this without you?" And Charlie's like, "You couldn't." So they do a certain amount to dissuade the complaint that it is just like. And I still think that's kind of there, because it is essentially, the next morning he's like, "Wow, last night was literally magical." Well, yeah, you're going to have had a good time. You got to ride around in Santa's sleigh. What kid wouldn't think that was the best night ever, no matter who he was traveling with? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty crazy,
For sure.
So there's an element of that that's never going away because of the premise of the movie. But they do a pretty good job, I think, particularly in that second Christmas, to show that Charlie and his dad really, unite over this stuff, and they work together on this stuff. And this movie, if this was the only thing that existed in the Santa Claus franchise, I'd really like that payoff at the end where Charlie says, "I'm going to go into the family business."
Although as the Honest Trader points out, does that mean he's going to have to throw his dad off a roof?
Well, again, I don't want to keep going on about it. By design, he can retire at eventual point. That's fine. I don't know. Yeah. Going into the family business is such a shame of a line, because now in modern context we know, he's not gonna do that, so they're gonna have to do something with his character to explain why he. I mean, maybe they do something in the second and third movies. I really don't remember the second and third movies very well. So I vaguely remember a speed dating scene from the next movie, I remember that he has to find a wife in a certain amount of time. I remember the vague plot, but I don't remember a huge amount about it. But do they?
They're kind. Go on. Sorry, you go. No, you go.
Well, my question was just do they do something to explain why adult Charlie might not want to go into the family business?
There's a lot of Charlie stuff in the second movie for sure, and some of it shows the negative impact of it, but it's not necessarily about the Santa of it all. But Charlie's prominent in the second movie, and not really that present in the third. I did think I did think at the end of watching this, maybe that will be the end of the next movie. Maybe Carl Penn won't become Santa. Maybe it will be Charlie. But then it would be a bit of a weird show to set up and make us want Carl Penn to be Santa and then that not to happen. But you never know. That could be what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most likely thing is gonna be that, look, Dad, yeah, I want to be Santa. Look, I reckon opening of the show, he's like, "I'm not being Santa no more. I'm retiring," and everyone's like, "Well, you're the best Santa." And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm moving on. It's time. Let me go see if Charlie wants to do this now." And he goes to Charlie, and it's first episode is he's trying to convince Charlie to do it, and Charlie's like, "Yeah, I wanted to be Santa when I was 7. I'm an adult. I respect what you do, but I have my own career and family, and I'm not up in sticks and going to I'm my own person now. I don't really want that for me." And he's like, "Damn, I've got to find someone." If it's something like that, that's fine. I think that's probably what they'll do.
Yeah, because let me just look up, because I did think when I saw there's a scene in the trailer where, so when was the Santa Claus 3? 2006, so that's 15 years ago? Maybe then. There's a scene in the trailer where you see the family, and I was like, I'm not sure this is set as many years later as it is, because the younger of the kids just doesn't look 15. Let me get the teaser up. But yeah, maybe we'll do a little bit of this on the third podcast. I'm just seeing now because it comes up.
But yeah, but I think we could both sort of like I think like it's a bit of a weird thing that they're now doing the Santa Clauses where they're having that premise of what happens when Tim Allen wants to hand it down to the next Santa Claus, and obviously they, unbeknownst to the people making this movie, that many years ago, they've kind of actually made their premise a bit more difficult because they've got to try and figure out a way for it to not be Charlie. So they're gonna have to explain that somehow.
To be fair, they've got a door. It's not clear. I can't work out whether this kid is Eric Lloyd or the kid or Buddy. So I can't work out whether it's Charlie or Buddy in the screenshot. So maybe that's not actually Charlie and that's Buddy, because this kid looks like he could be 15, and so maybe Charlie's not in the trailer. But
yeah, that'd be my assumption. And he goes to visit Charlie. Charlie's like basically an adult. He's a suitcase wielding businessman that's like maybe takes a little bit after Scott himself, maybe. But maybe that, and he's like, nah, I don't want that anymore.
Because Eric Lloyd is back, which is amazing. It's literally the same actor that's in this.
Oh wow! I know that they've got Bernard back. They've got Krumholtz back as Bernard, which is gonna be funny because in this he's clearly looks like a child. By the way, best performance maybe in the movie is Bernard, right? Do you think? Am I right? I mean, Tim Allen's pretty good, but yeah.
Judge Rinder's very good.
Judge Rinder, Judge Reinhold.
Judge Reinhold, sorry.
For those who don't know, in the UK there's a daytime TV show with a judge that does petty stuff. He's kind of like Judge Judy was in the States, but he's called Judge Rinder. He's very popular, but yeah, definitely not Judge Rinder in this movie.
Sorry, yeah, Judge Reinhold. Let's talk about the third act, Dan. What's your beef? I mean, I immediately.
I've talked a
act,
lot.
So
I pass this to you because I've talked a lot in the last 30 minutes. So
no, but I've done my thing. I think I started with that and then we veered into other places. I've sort of done my third act thing. For me, it's Scott sort of realizes really quickly, just sees the snow globe and is like, "Yeah, I am Santa," and then it just kind of becomes, Santa gets interrogated, the elf squad, and so Scott takes Charlie, which is feels a bit wrong, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. And then he returns Charlie, and then they believe he's Santa, so it's fine. He has this big goodbye with Charlie, but then he comes back and he gets Charlie, and it's just it feels like the family drama of it all ends about 3 different times, 3 different ways. It feels like the elf liberation squad or whatever they are feels a bit
the effective
silly.
Liberating flight squad.
Yeah, it feels a bit silly. It is in keeping with it doesn't feel as whilst there's a bit of tech with the elves, they get into the North Pole by keypad entry, let's not forget. So whilst there's a bit of that
I cannot tell you enough how much I love that, by the way, that it's weird magic meets
I do.
technology.
Yeah.
It's a great
it's
a great and very interesting visual choice.
Yeah, I completely agree, but it feels almost a step too far in the third act.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, and it's the Tim Allen of it all. So I've sort of given my why I think the third act falls apart, which is why I threw to you. But so why for you?
Yeah, slightly different reasons, because I think with Scott, I'm actually okay with Scott's change, because what they do with Scott, I think, is slowly have him have to accept it. So the looking into the ball, because he walks in, and I think it's Neil says, "You still believe you're Santa?" And he's being all sarcastic. You still think you're Santa, do you? And Scott looks back at him, and there's this pause, and he honestly and really sincerely replies, "I don't know." And I think that's in itself shows a big level of shift for Scott across the second act of the movie, right? Because that's what the second act of the movie is. The second act of the movie is him slowly embracing, becoming Santa. Now, I make all the jokes I want about the fact that it's insane, that it's just like it's forced on him. You know, I still have questions about whether this is actually a satisfying character arc, because honestly, is it a satisfying character arc when you could explain any character's change as magic literally changed him? I don't know if that's cool, but let's put that to a side for it, because there isn't an easy answer. There's no answer to that. I think it does impact my opinion of the film, but not significantly. So then there isn't a real easy solution, because that's the premise of the movie. But if we're just going by watching what Scott does and the choices he makes as the movie goes on, that second act really does do a lot of denial tinged with maybe. Then the letters show up, and as you said, then we have the shot of him knowing who's naughty and nice. We have him embracing sort of the food side of it, maybe, like eating a lot more cookies and milk and stuff. And then we have him reluctant, but then actually talking to those kids, you know, in the park. We keep showing him doing denial, but then getting sucked in. And, you know, when you do all of those scenes, and the sum total of what those scenes add up to is a Scott that's ready to accept it. And I think once he gets to that point, that's when he looks at the snow globe and sees what he sees. Because I think that snow globe is a magic snow globe. I'm going to put it out there. And I don't just mean it's magic in that what you're seeing is a magical thing, because it's like it's a toy that almost couldn't exist, right? Because what's inside of it is almost like a real world with a diorama that couldn't possibly exist or work. But even forgetting that part, I think it's magical in another way. I think, essentially, this world's equivalent of a muggle, you know, Neil, basically, looks at that snow globe and sees a boring, old, regular snow globe. But when you believe in the magic and you look at that snow globe, when you're ready to accept the magic and you look at that snow globe, you see the sort of sled go through it and all the magic that is in that globe, right? So I think it's actually pretty clever, because I was making notes about we never have a moment where Scott just goes, oh, I guess I am Santa. But that's the moment. He gets handed the snow globe, he sees it, and it moves, and so magic is real.
Would that not be so much cleaner if he sees the snow globe earlier in the movie with Charlie and nothing happens? He looks at the snow globe and he doesn't see a thing, and Charlie says, "But what about the sleigh?" And he's like, "What sleigh?"
Yes, okay, so he does look at the snow globe, and he goes, it's just a snow globe. We make tons of these at work. They don't sell very well. You know, that does happen. But yeah, they don't specifically say the sleigh thing. And I think that is important. I think they do need to clarify that. Because there is the moment when Charlie says, look, you are Santa, see, and shows him the snow globe, and Scott's dismissive of the snow globe. That happens, I think, after the school scene, maybe? You know, where he tells all the other kids he's Santa.
The authority, just a quick side note, the authority the head teacher has, where she just points back down at the chair and Scott just reluctantly sinks back into it, really made me laugh.
Yeah, it's a funny bit. It's a good scene. So yeah, I think for me, that would have made it clearer if they'd literally had a line like, you don't see the sleigh? What sleigh? Just two words, two sentences like that would have definitely made it clearer. So Scott looks into the snow globe and he sees it. Now, in terms of your structural complaints, I very much agree. It's so weird. We have him triumphantly leave on the sleigh, and then we cut to the same street later that night, less people. He returns and triumphantly leaves in the sleigh. Why? Why do we have two of those? We do not need two of those. Give me just the first one. Or the second. Don't need both. So that's 100% agree with you. I think, though, the main problem with the third act is that the conflict and the problem is invented in the third act to be solved in the third act. The movie, it suddenly becomes about saving Christmas by getting Santa out of prison. That's our third act excitement. That's our third act set piece. But it's a thing that's set up in the third act and solved in the third act.
Do you not think you could argue it's him going to prison is the climax of the strained relationship with his ex-wife and Judge? the judge.
No, because they're not directly involved in that, in the sense of, like, from their perspective.
Well, they call the police to the house. They have the police at the house. That's what gets him arrested.
Right, but the reason he's being arrested is for a choice of his, nothing to do with them earlier in the movie. Because he irresponsibly chooses to essentially kidnap his son. Because regardless of what you think about, like, those characters, Laura and Neil, Scott is deeply irresponsible to just take the child after he's just had custody papers signed that says he can't have visitation rights. His lack of respect for both the law and the legal side of this, and also just Laura, is obscene. Like, he doesn't even leave her a note.
Yeah,
he just kidnaps her child. She is well within her right to do that. But that's the start of the third act.
Yeah, for sure.
So the third act starts with him making a choice that gets him on the radar of the police. Because had he not kidnapped his child, he would not be on the police's radar at all. So he causes a problem for himself, then gets caught when he comes back, and then he gets freed by the elves. And that all happens in the third act. Every single of those 3 beats happens in the third act. And I just think that's part of the problem. It's like the writer of the script wanted the moment where everyone believes, and he triumphantly goes away to be the end of the movie, but they didn't know how to give the end of the movie some sort of excitement beyond that. So they contrived Santa is caught and needs to be freed. And sort of, forced it into the third act of the script in a way that doesn't quite feel natural to me. It's fine, though, I think, because it does lead to some good jokes. I do like the police interrogation scene when he keeps asking him his name and he just keeps giving him different names for Santa. That's pretty funny. And I agree the elves are silly, but I don't think they're too silly. There's already been a lot of silly stuff in this movie, so Do
you think it? Because I don't bump into. I agree with what you're saying. I don't think I bump into it as much, because into the element you're talking about as much. Although, well, I suppose I do, because I literally described it as getting a bit silly, which maybe part of that is it gets a bit silly because it's set up and resolved within that third act. But
I do think that leads to some of the structural issues you were talking about. I do think that's part of the reason that happens.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm just thinking, well, it needs something. It needs some exciting kids movie third act thing, doesn't it?
But maybe something more natural than child kidnapping. Although, again, so many good jokes come from it. The shots of the police rounding up various Santas and doing a Santa lineup are some of the funniest things in the movie. So it's hard for me to say that should be removed altogether.
Yeah, and the artist drawing of Santa.
So good.
We're looking for this man.
So good. Yeah, that's great. I love all of that stuff. So it's hard for me to say that stuff needs to go, but yeah, carry on with what your point was, sorry.
No, well, I can't think of some. I guess I was just trying to think out loud of something more linked in.
It just causes some structural problems. I just wish whatever the final act problem was something different that could be established earlier in the movie. That's my preference. Maybe because it's a off year for Santa, where he's got his 10 months to maybe the problem is usually Santa spends all year at the North Pole, but on a year where we're getting a new Santa and he's allowed those 10 months to get his affairs in order, the North Pole is short a boss, and there are issues with getting the toys done in time or something, and Santa needs to be present for that, and he wants to leave the kid at home, but he knows having his son will help him. So he doesn't just take his son for some insane out of nowhere impulsive decision, but he needs the son to help him solve the problem at the North Pole with the toys or whatever. Then,
or is it as simple? Is it as simple as Bernard takes him?
Sure. Oh yeah, there you go.
So it's not Scott taking him, although that only resolves the character stuff. It's still a situation that arises in the third act, unless maybe you embed Charlie's talking with the elves throughout the movie and working on ideas throughout, and just no one believes him. But
moving on to some of the bits though, 'cause we should probably cover some of the stuff. But I think the third act does have a load of like some structural issues. I don't think there's an easy solution because it's all baked really hard into the it's baked. Most of it is baked into where the script leads it because the first two acts are so dense with what they're doing. I'm not even sure how you find the time to set up your third act problem earlier. So there is also that element too. That might be why the third act feels a bit tacked on in the way it does. And again, I agree with you. Actually, we didn't cover this part of it. One of your brief sort of comments on, you know, as part of the list of things about the third act you weren't fond of. I think Laura and Neil come suddenly thinky Santa too. So I guess Neil is fine because he doesn't believe until he physically sees a reindeer. Bernard vanishes in front of him and the weenie whistle lands in his hand. That's when he goes, Santa, you know, that's when he knows. But Laura, what? She just looks into his eyes and just knows. What?
Magic of Christmas.
Yeah, that I didn't buy.
It's the only explanation you can give for that bit.
So weird. So weird. Anyway,
what's your other notes?
Yeah, so why have a courier bring all the boxes of List or Naughty or Nice that you have magic and elves? Why send the equivalent of this world's UPS with 5 trucks? Can't he just? I kind of get the gag because he like chases them down the street as they're driving away.
Yeah.
But isn't it also kind of funny that he's like upstairs shaving? You see him downstairs. He looks in a mirror, sees he's got a beard, goes upstairs to shave, comes back down. The boxes are all just there. That's fine, also, right?
Yeah, but the explanation I think is that Bernard says he's needed back at the North Pole at Thanksgiving, and Scott basically either gives him a look, I can't remember, or says a line which indicates he's not coming. And then Bernard says, I'll telegram them to you, or I'll fax them to you, whatever. I'll send you the list.
I think
he's sending it in a muggle way, I think.
To be
I mean, really, it's for the gag, but I think that's, you know, the explanation is, okay, fine, you won't come to the North Pole and engage with us. I'm going to send you this list, and you'll get it in a typical fashion.
I hate the ladder. I hate the rose such a ladder, or whatever that thing is. In the book, the word is arose such a clatter. That is what is in that book. Why would the kid, mishearing it, magic a real fucking ladder?
That I've got no explanation for.
It's a fucking dumb joke, is what that is. Sorry, kids.
That's your
Sorry, kids. Magic Christmas is dead. Santa's not real. Fuck that part of the movie. It's just so deeply stupid. Let me ask you about the special effects, Chris. How do you feel about the special effects? You think they hold up? You think they still work mostly?
It's really difficult with these movies, isn't it? Because it's got such a 90s movie aesthetic that you
never know how much leeway to give it.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, it holds up because I know I'm watching a 90s movie. But you know what? If I saw a TV show, do you know what I mean, with some of these effects, I'd be like, okay, fine. Like, you know, holds up more than some recent episodes of Doctor Who. So, yeah, I think the effects do hold up.
Yeah, I think they mostly do too. There's a couple of dodgy ones on the sleigh flying over things.
Yeah, but that's But
the close-ups on the reindeer are good because they're clearly puppets. I think they look good. And I think like shots like him squeezing down the pipe look pretty good, and the fireplace like magically appearing, that all looks pretty good. I reckon.
Especially the fireplace appearing like the other end, especially like it coming up in the room with the girl is particularly effective, I think, and genuinely, I think that would work on a young kid now. Like you play that to a young kid, they'd get awe and wonder from that moment.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they mostly work. I think there's, like I said, a couple of weird compositing, but there always is with these things. I never know where to draw the line, like about like judging a film on its special effects when it's old, because there is a certain amount of you've got to understand what the limitations of the time were. But at the same time, then movies like Jurassic Park, which we haven't done, I don't think. No, we haven't yet.
No, we haven't. No.
That has like incredible special effects that still look great to this day, and that's head scratching. It's because of a very clever blend of practical with CG. But we'll come to that at some point. That's a different discussion. But it kind of means that I have an unfair barometer for other things, because I'm like, why couldn't you have just been Jurassic Park? It's just not a fair thing to accuse anything of doing. What's with this 90s trend of shitty dads? Why are they always shitty dads?
Yeah, we talked about this with the Jingle All the Way thing. I think what we started this discussion with is the bigger point there. It's the fact that he's a shitty dad that potentially is no longer a shitty dad because of the magic of becoming Father Christmas, not the lessons he learns. That's a bigger problem. And he's not. He's never that shitty with Charlie, although again, I mean, he is late, and he's like, he's a bit of a bumbling dad. Like, I don't know, from the minute he's with Charlie,
he like skips through the end of the book. He's like he's constantly sarcastic with the kid. Like, he's very negative all the time with the kid at the beginning of the movie. He's very grumpy when the kid wants him to put on the suit. He's like, I'm not going to put on the suit. Like,
He's particularly grouchy whenever the ex-husband comes up as well. Like, he's particularly dickish towards the very concept of Neil.
Right, yeah. Which and by the way, can I just say credit to the movie for not going down the route of the stepdad that's genuinely a monster. Like, Neil isn't Neil's no one's favorite character. He is kind of smug and sort of like sort of feels like he comes across like he's superior, like he knows better than you all the time. But like, he's not a bad person. He does genuinely seem to care about Charlie. He's not like an obvious easy target monster.
And he seems to only jump to like extreme action, such as the papers and stuff, when he feels Charlie's in genuine like risk of what the fuck's going on here.
Right, and when Charlie comes back later after he's been kidnapped, like, he runs over and gives him a big hug and stuff, and like, between the script and Judge Reinhold's performance, I think they've avoided a common trap there, because it's very easy.
Yeah, I'd agree.
to make your hero not seem like such a bad guy for hating on him when you make him a complete villain. It's a mistake that Mrs. Doubtfire makes when they do the reveal that the Pierce Brosnan character is actually a bit of a prick. Because it just takes away from what you're saying about the main character. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I did find it interesting that they made, excuse me, initially Scott the one that believed in Santa. Because, or at least was the one that wanted to maintain that with Charlie. Because obviously the movie is about him not believing that he's become Santa. So I thought it was an interesting choice. I feel like there's a version of this script where, Laura brings Charlie round and he's talking about Santa, and Tim Allen's character is like, "Are you kidding me? Santa?" He's like, "How old is he now? Like, what are you doing?" He's basically an adult. Why? There's a version of the script where it's the other way around. I think this is the more interesting version.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of that is, and I'm fine with this as well, I think part of it is because Neil was the one that told him not to believe. Like, that's part of the reason he rallies so hard against that. But yeah, I think it works. I agree with you.
Yeah. I want to give the music a shout out. Why the fuck does the music in this movie go so hard, Chris? Like, the scene where they lower into the workshop for a start, but the main theme, all the music in this movie is so fucking awesome. And I've never noticed it before. What happened here? Did they just accidentally hire like one of the greatest composers of all time when they were supposed to hire like a TV music guy? Like, this music is so good. And I'm not talking about it's not full of songs or anything, but it's like, what is this? What happened here? I'm going to look up who composed this, actually.
I don't know, but it's very magical and it's just very magical and Christmassy. And I think that must be, because let me recreate it. There's also a lot of it and more than you realise at first. Because earlier on, let me Google the exact same thing again. I'm watching the movie and that really inappropriate bit with the Veronica thing happens. Veronica moment, happens. Where he says, Veronica, very nice. And, she says, in your dreams, da-da-da. And I think I recognise the actress. And I'm like, who is that actress? Is that someone, famous? So I Google the Santa Claus Veronica, and the first thing that comes up is Veronica Very Nice, song by Michael Curvatino, album Santa Claus. And I'm like, that moment has its own soundtrack, has its own song. And it's like, wow, the attention, to detail in this movie that there's a specific song for that moment must mean that there's music really littered throughout.
Yeah. There's a lot. And let me see. Score. The Santa Claus score. Who?
The actress wasn't anyone I recognised, by the way. I think I was getting her confused with Terry Polo, who was in The West Wing and the Meet the Parents movies. I think she looks a bit like her.
It's this guy, Michael Convertino, who you just mentioned. What else has this guy worked on? Let's see. Oh, wow. A couple of Tim Allen movies, including Jungle to Jungle. Okay. No, I don't recognise much of this stuff, truthfully, at all. Most recent project was a film called Wake Wood in 2009. Straight Into Darkness 2004. I don't recognise these movies and shows at all. All right, I don't know who this is, but I tell you what, they what a great bit of work they did. I don't know who this guy is, but legitimately,
yeah, for sure.
the music for this movie is fantastic, and I want to particularly shout out the bit that has vocals as they head down into when the sled stops, and it stops on that panel, and the kid comes out, types in the code, and then it starts lowering. The song that plays as they lower into the workshop is an absolute masterpiece of music. What a great piece of music that is. A very tiny little note, but the ballroom gag is very good. The rooms are all labelled, and one of the rooms labelled ballroom, which immediately conjures up a space where you have a ball. But instead, if you look through the glass, it's just lots of balls being bounced around. That's hilarious.
That's very good.
I enjoy that joke.
What do you think? I've thought of something we've not covered, and I don't, because of that being the type of thing. I'm not sure it's on your list, so I'll interject if that's all right with a question.
Yes, please.
What do we think of the decision for the elves to be played by children?
My next note, Chris. Very good.
Oh.
Yes. My next note is how hilarious it is that little girl acts like she's 40. When he says to Judy, when Judy tells him how old she is, and he goes, "You look very good for your age," or something like that. She goes, "Thanks, but I'm seeing someone in rapping." She's
a very good actress. Yeah.
Which is both a very good joke, a great delivery from her, and then a fantastic reaction from Tim Allen.
Yeah. His reaction, because in the hands of another actor, that moment, and it is a little bit ooh, you do sort of cringe a little bit. You're a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it would be so much worse were it not for both of those performances. But her performing it like an old woman who looks like a child, and for him reacting in a fucking what is going on here kind of way.
Yeah, because and it shouldn't ever really read otherwise because the reality is she's the one that makes it he's genuinely asking someone who looks like a child, telling someone who looks like a child who's just told him they're hundreds of years old, well, you look good for that. Which is, I think, a fair statement. But yeah, you're right. When she makes it a thing about well, that's very sweet of you, but I'm actually seeing someone. His reaction is so it takes out any potential risk of anybody misinterpreting that joke. I feel.
I'm saying in the hands of lesser actors, that dialogue could be done so badly.
100%.
Yeah, I think what's fun about the elves being played by children thing is it means you get to litter the elves throughout and have them in multiple scenes where there's children, and I think that's a really fun element of the film. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see how they write around it with Bernard. But we shall see what happens there.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I like it. I think it's creative. I've never seen it before. It does unfortunately accidentally, and it's not the intent, but it does evoke the idea of, a bunch of children making toys. I mean, that is a little close to home, considering there are probably, there are many of the toys you buy at Christmas are probably made in horrible factories where children are, being paid pennies to put together that shit. But, I don't think that's the intent. I think that's just an accidental sort of thing. I think the intent was just that it'd be kind of funny, the idea that these elves are hundreds of years old, but they're actually played by children. And I think it's a great joke. I think it works really well. It makes the movie kind of unique, but kind of charming. And I like it very much. I do like it. I think it's a good element. And they found a bunch of really good little kid actors too, by the way. The only one I don't like is the kid that's part of the flying team. That's like, we're elves with attitude. I'm like,
That's partly the dialogue, though. Like,
it
that's
is
appalling. You find me a child that could say that dialogue and make that work, and I'm showing you a child who goes on to win an Oscar, because I couldn't do that line now would make it work. And so, how you're finding a child that can is a near miracle.
Agreed. I really like as well, while we're on the scene of him talking with all the elf kids, the scene between him and Judy where he says, "I see it, but I don't believe it," and he gives a whole speech about that. And Judy's like, "Kids don't have to see to believe; they just believe." But you're kind of the other way around. Like you kind of need to see it to believe it because you're an adult. And I just think that's a really charming scene. Again, both of them really well acting, really well writing. It's just everything really well written, really well acted. It's all working in that moment. So I really like that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think the transformation sequence is good and funny. I like it. I think that, it's very 90s sort of Jim Carrey movie in that sense. It's kind of like intentionally silly, but I like it. I think it works, and I do think the taking visitation thing away is like really brutal. But I love the line. I wrote this down. "I never thought you'd stoop to changing your physical appearance to make Charlie like you." What a great way to sum up where she's coming from in a single line that makes you totally understand the choices she's making.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you never, even though Tim Allen's the hero, well, Tim Allen and Charlie are the heroes of this movie, you never resent we should give the character's name. Hold on. You never resent Laura for Laura or Neil for doing what they're doing. Not once. You just see it as a bit of a misunderstanding, and that's actually a great writing for you to not rally against them too.
Yeah, because even like when the police are chasing him down, they're not treated like villains because from their perspective, they're trying to save a kid who's been kidnapped, and that's kind of clever.
Do you think that works for children as well, or do you think you could watch this as a kid and rally against them?
Well, yeah, they got like a rebellious thing going on. They go in and they tie up the police officer and they tie him to his chair and stuff. So I guess maybe kids read it differently, but yeah.
Well, Laura and Neil specifically, I'm talking about. Like,
I don't think I ever saw this movie as a kid and found Neil to be a bad guy.
No,
I wished he'd be less stuffy, and I wished he'd believe. But I didn't need him to for it to work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He towed the line, I think. Yeah.
I think it's really, really well written, their parts and that how you don't find them the enemy.
Yeah, I would agree. Last very quick couple of notes, very quickly, Chris. One is just I wrote down a line I like, which is when he tells the kid, "Charlie, you believed in me when no one else did." I think that whole speech is kind of sweet. But here's the last note. Where's Rudolph?
Oh yeah. Does he not call? Yeah, because he calls one of the reindeers Rudolph, doesn't he?
Nope. Sarcastically, he calls Comet Rudolph, and Rudolph gets annoyed. And Comet gets annoyed because he goes, calm down, Rudolph. And Comet's like, he's like, sorry, Comet. And then he's like happy. But no Rudolph. Because, so there are traditionally, the 8. Rudolph is the 9th. In this movie, there are only ever 8. Rudolph is not in the movie.
What's going on there? Is that there's no triv or anything about that?
No, no, just not in the movie.
I have
Now,
no
I looked
idea.
I tried looking it up to see if anyone else could explain it, and somebody said, "Oh, this is a more traditional. Rudolph was a late inclusion, like he's not a traditional part of the Santa lore, as it were. So the idea is this movie just went for a more traditional approach. You know,
I'm sure Rudolph's in the next one, but I might be wrong because I would have sworn Rudolph was in this one, but I would have got that wrong. So yeah.
yeah,
Weird.
no Rudolph at all. There are 8. I don't remember all the names of them, but there are 9 in total if you include Rudolph.
Oh wow. Okay. No, I've got no explanation for where Rudolph is at all. Maybe he stopped believing in Santa.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say like it's the idea that like Santa went for years without them, and then added the 9th after that story, you know, where it was a particularly foggy Christmas or whatever. But yeah,
Okay. Cool.
yeah, that's the closest I come to an explanation. I'm not, you know.
That makes sense.
Rudolph was introduced in 1939 in a storybook by Robert L. May. Prior to that, there were only 8 reindeer: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen. Donner apparently was Dunder at some point, but they changed that because it sounds like, yeah.
It's just interesting where it's playing with such iconography, you know, from the North Pole to the sleigh to the you know how Santa looks and all of that stuff, and they're not playing with Rudolph.
Yeah.
Unless is Rudolph like a separate, like, I don't know, did they not have the rights? Is Rudolph in other big Christmas movies? I don't know. Yeah, I think he is, isn't he?
Well, I think with Rudolph, he's 1939. He'd be out of copyright by now, anyway.
Would he have been in 1994?
Oh, that's a good question. So if Rudolph was introduced in 1939 as a character, what's the copyright thing? The statute thing? It's like 70 years, is it?
Something like that. Let me Google Rudolph in film.
Well, that's only. To be fair, it's 58 years, and I feel like it's 70 for something to go into full. So maybe that is what it is. Christ, that'd be weird, wouldn't it? But they use Rudolph in tons of other movies. But like, yeah. Oh, but they though? Because I was thinking, there's like a sort of Rudolph in Night Before Christmas, but there isn't. It's his dog Zero that has a glow nose that goes up front.
Yes, I'm trying to find like Rudolph in film, and it's just coming up with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is a legendary Christmas character. Hold on.
Because there were all those like
film.
Rankin and Bass like Christmas specials that had Rudolph as a central character.
Yeah, see, this is interesting because in the film remake of I'm on Rudolph's Wikipedia, and homages in media. In the film remake of Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Grinch disguises his dog Max as Rudolph. In Fred Claus, Rudolph is mentioned and briefly seen. In the same film, a billboard for Pepsi Cola, which features Rudolph, can be seen. So, according to this, on the Rudolph the Reindeer Legendary Christmas Character page, the only 2 films listed are Dr. Seuss and Fred Claus.
Wow. Rudolph is not in movies for some reason. Maybe it is a rights thing then.
It's got to be a rights thing then.
Bizarre. Anyway, right. Shall we move on? I mean, look, I don't know if we said it at the beginning or not, but I recommend this. I think it's a super charming, super fun movie. It's definitely flawed. It's not perfect. It's got some of the weird stuff in it, but like I think mostly this is really, really enjoyable. I had an absolute blast. I do not begrudge sitting down for an hour and a half and watching this movie. You won't either. I can't say the same for the sequels. We'll see, but I feel like I'm going to feel very differently when I sit down to do those. But I'd be absolutely lying if I didn't tell you today that this isn't a great Christmas movie and well worth your time.
I completely agree with that. I think it's a fun movie to watch, especially it's a good movie to watch with people and like poke at holes with people. I think it's fun and there's nostalgia. Also, according to the Intellectual Property Wiki, there is a design trademark for Rudolph, and there is a trademark on the name Rudolph and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So maybe Rudolph is trademarked.
So he's still under that trademark until, well, what was it, 1930, it's 1936, was it I said? 1930.
Well, there's also an article here saying there was a 1967 renewal The copyright in the 1939 Rudolph version of Rudolph expires in 2034, which is why maybe in The Grinch it's not actually Rudolph, it's a dog designed to look like Rudolph, and in Fred Claus there's like the suggestion of Rudolph.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there you go. And it's the same in Night Before Christmas. Like I said, they use 0 to be Rudolph instead of having actual Rudolph. So yeah,
it's got to be a copyright thing then.
Yeah, that must
be
crazy.
Who
knew?
Yes,
Who
I
knew?
would recommend this movie. Shall we
Triv
triv it up?
Yep.
Let's triv it up.
So trivia. So now there was a very long list of people who they thought about for this role, but I'll tell you the big ones, and then I'll give you the list of people that were on the sort of sub list that I don't know if they even ever spoke to. So we'll see. So the role of Scott Calvin was actually written with an actor in mind, and it was not Tim Allen. It was written for Bill Murray. Now, after reading the script and being offered the role on the spot, Murray declined. He did not think it suited his humour at all. I disagree. I think this is exactly a Bill Murray character. But fine.
I'm not so sure. I think potentially when we've had this conversation with Bill Murray before, I think Bill Murray is potentially a bit too sharp and a bit too kind of cutting in his humour, and potentially the role and the sweetness between him and Charlie wouldn't have come as naturally to Bill Murray as the choice of Tim Allen.
I would encourage you to think back to Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
How he turns on the sweetness towards the end of that movie, and the charm towards the end of that movie when he starts to learn his lesson.
Yeah, it's a different. It's not a parental sweetness though, is it? It's a.
Mm-hmm.
It
is romantic. Yeah, you're right. It is different.
It's a romantic sweetness. I can see why Bill Murray felt that way, personally.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he'd have been really good at it. But yeah, the other option, and was someone who was definitely actually approached and was nearly in this movie, was Chevy Chase. Unfortunately, in the end, there was a scheduling conflict and he had to turn down the role. So those are the two big ones.
It seems really weird, the idea of... I don't know, this shouldn't feel weird, and maybe you're about to go, you're being a moron, what about this actor? But the notion of an actor having two big separate Christmas movies feels a bit wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that.
Like, you've got one, Chevy. You've got one. Like,
and arguably at this point, Bill did too, because he'd done Scrooged at this point, right?
Yeah. I would have thought so. Yeah, Scrooged is like early 90s, late 80s, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah. So, here's the list, right, of the actors they otherwise considered. Now, I don't know if these were just names on a chalkboard and they reached out to agents and never actually got in touch with these actors. I don't know if these actors actually auditioned. I have no idea. But it's a long list, but there are some incredible names in here, Chris. So I'll read the whole list, and if there's any you want to pick out, feel free.
Well, I'll tell you what. Read the list, and you tell me which Rick and Morty gun, what version you're seeing with the Rick and Morty gun, and I'll tell you which version I'm seeing with the Rick and Morty gun.
Perfect. So, John Travolta, Rowan Atkinson, Mike Myers, Michael Keaton, Harrison Ford, Jerry Seinfeld, Patrick Swayze, Mel Gibson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Robin Williams, and Tom Hanks. It's a list, innit?
So, for genuinely would be a great movie, I'm seeing the Robin Williams version. But for sheer... What would that look like? I'm intrigued to see the Jerry Seinfeld version.
Right, I have a similar answer. I think the actual, I'm casting it from that list, and it's the version I think will make the best version. Again, I'm like you, I'm going Robin Williams. But my Rick and Morty portal gun version, where I'm like, I want to see what that looks like. It's Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
That's weirdly great casting. What a grumpy shit he is. I'd love to see it.
Michael Keaton's Jack Frost, isn't he? So again, it's like, he's got one.
Yeah, but I think Jack Frost is after this. Jack Frost is a couple of years after this.
Ah, right, fair enough.
Yeah. I could be wrong, actually. Let me double check that. I'm sure Jack Frost is closer to like the year 2000, like it's 98, 99. I could be wrong. Yeah, 98.
Yeah, there you go.
So Tim Allen actually has a criminal record. I'm not 100% sure what for. I didn't actually look into it. I probably should have double checked that and find out why. But apparently Disney at the time, and probably still now, have an actual strict, like an actual policy about not hiring ex-cons because they're, the family company making family pictures for the family. But they made an exception in this case, presumably because they went through that entire list of actors and none of them wanted to do it.
And because it's like they've got that rule unless that person's already the star of a huge family sitcom, and then they're willing to waiver. That's what it is.
Correct. We have a small list as well of people they considered for Neil. This is an interesting list too. I'll run through it. Similar: Jeff Daniels, Peter McNichol, Stanley Tucci, Steve Guttenberg, Rick Moranis, and Bradley Whitford. Now, I'm Rick and Morty Portland gunned right into Rick Moranis or Bradley Whitford. I want to see either one of those two.
Yeah, same. I think this is one of those weird times where I think every single person on that list could have done it well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I like Peter McNichol a lot. I like Jeff Daniels a lot. Steve Guttenberg's great. They've all got it. But I will say, actually, we're talking about the character of Neil here, and I do think that Judge Reinhold did bring a certain smugness. And I think
completely, yeah.
And I think, arguably, you run the risk with Rick Moranis or Guttenberg, too sweet.
Yeah, I think
they might be too likable. I think Bradley Whitford of that list is the one that might be the best able to encapsulate that. Like, he's an arsehole, but he's not a bad person. He's just like smug and self.
Jeff Daniels could have done it as well.
Absolutely, yes. I think yeah. In terms of like, if I'm just casting this movie and I want it to be right for the role and not just my own morbid curiosity to see what Rick Moranis would have done with it, I'm going for Bradley Whitford or Jeff Daniels.
Well, that's just Rick Moranis is just wanting more Rick Moranis, isn't it?
Yes, correct. Which I always do.
Speaking of sequel series, what's going on with Shrunk? I'm going to look that up.
Was that? Yeah, please do. I'm curious about that. But I assume that got COVIDed into delays. I assume it was around that time, wasn't it? So, Patricia Clarkson, Pamela Reed, Sally Field, Goldie Hawn, Patricia Heaton, and Kate Burton were all considered for the role of Laura. The name that sticks out to me there, I think, Sally Field. I like Sally Field. I'd have liked to have seen her do that. I don't think any of those other actresses are particularly right for the role. I really like the actress we have in this movie, whose name is currently escaping me to sort of make it sound like Wendy Crewson, who I think does a really good job. I wouldn't really be too eager to replace her, but in a world where I was forced to, I think Sally Field would be my choice of that list.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So, for one very strange week in November 1994, Chris, Tim Allen officially had, at the same time, the #1 movie at the box office, the #1 rated television show, and the #1 New York Times best-selling book.
Wow.
So he had a book called Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man, and it was out at the same time, and Home Improvement had just returned for its third or fourth season? Third season. And that was #1 show on TV, and then this movie came out and was the #1 movie.
Home Improvement. Do you think Home Improvement and Seinfeld are potentially the two biggest discrepancies between how popular they were in America and how much they sort of embedded into culture in the UK? Like, do you know what I mean? Like Friends, The Office, these things are huge in America, huge in the UK. Seinfeld and Home Improvement, I doubt my mum and dad have ever seen an episode of either of those shows.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, kids like me and you probably are the best people that like to have seen them because they did get aired on like TV and we watched a lot of it as a kid. So I definitely saw episodes of Home Improvement on I feel like Channel 4 or something when I was younger.
Yeah, to be fair, I guess Home Improvement and Boy Meets World are probably on a level in the UK. Actually, I just didn't ever get into Home Improvement, so maybe that's it. But I don't think it wasn't hearing it was number one makes me go, really? Like, I just don't imagine it being this monster hit, which it clearly was.
I'm amazed. I can't believe this podcast has made it to 2 hours. Go on. Sorry, you've got the answer to the question about Shrunk.
Oh, sorry. Did you just say you needed to lose? Sorry.
No. I just said I can't believe we've gone to 2 hours. I'm like, this of all the movies, I should have known actually. Big Santa Claus fan, and me having a million questions about the practicalities of the world.
Basically, it did get COVID and stopped. In 2020, Bob Chapek, Disney CEO, said that filming had resumed on all postponed projects. However, Gad contradicted this in June 21 when he said that they hadn't started, but he was hoping to early 22. And then in early 22, Gad said that he and Morris had once again started collaborating in preparation for the sequel, which suggests to me it's not started filming yet.
Oh, so that's a while away. Fair enough.
Yeah.
The dance scene that Tim Allen, not the dance scene, but the dance thing that Tim Allen does when they're all walking towards the camera at the end of the Christmas Eve montage for the second Christmas Eve, it was done in one take, and apparently, sorry, I'm calling BS on this. So they're saying it was improvised and done in one take. I'm going to go ahead and disagree because they all do it simultaneously. I went back and checked. Tim Allen's arm goes up at the exact same time Krumholtz's arm goes up. Sorry, David Krumholtz plays Bernard. So, at the very least, it was planned.
Yeah,
so
it looked planned to me.
Yeah, so I think maybe it was improvised in that maybe they did 2 takes or something, or 3 takes, and like Tim Allen did that on the third one, and then they were like, oh, that's hilarious, let's all do that. So then they all do it. Well, fine.
Fair enough. Nice. BS. I don't like that dance, though, I must admit.
You don't like the dance?
Yeah, it's just a bit silly and cheesy. You know what it feels like? It feels like they're spoofing the heroes walking towards the mission, and no other bit of the movie feels like it's spoofing something else.
Mm.
There you go. That's why I don't like it.
I just think anyone accusing this movie of being silly is,
Yeah,
and yeah,
no, that's reasonable.
He shaves his beard off when it grows back, Chris. You think a dance is a bit silly?
Yeah. It's silly in a different way. I've explained why.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, you don't like something because it's not a big key that lets you in. We're all allowed our personal interpretations.
Yeah. I don't know. I tell you as well. It's 2 shots though. It's funny because I went back to look at it because I was confused about that trivia because I was like, it didn't look like it was like improvised. So I looked at it and it's 2 different shots. It's the same shot cut in half. There's something intersected in the middle, and the first shot is just them heroically walking towards the camera. So that is just the the hero shot off on the mission sort of thing, and then it cuts away to something else, and then it comes back and it's the continuation of that shot. And then they do he starts doing the dance and stuff. And I like the dance. I think the dance is fine. I think it's funny. But it is weird that it's both those shots. Like just do the one. Like I don't doing it twice is strange. Don't do it legitimately and then do the rug pull. That's a bit, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it just goes on a bit.
Maybe that's just me being pedantic. Anyway, we've already talked about this, actually, so I'm going to skip that one. That's the kid in Charlie's class that's secretly an elf. We've tackled that. This is mental, Chris. This is insane. On older releases of this film, Tim Allen makes a sarcastic remark in the movie which includes the line, 1-800-SPANK ME. Now,
what?
During the film's release, a woman from Cleveland, Ohio, supposedly called the supposedly fictional number for her curious grandchildren. Now, it turned out that was a real functioning sex line.
Sorry.
No, I think correct. That's the correct reaction. So, this went on for a little while with multiple people calling the number, discovering this, mortified, blah, blah, blah. And slowly the complaint started to build up for Disney. So in 1997, when Disney had received a couple, particularly one parent whose child had gathered, who'd called the number and racked up quite a large phone bill. I'm assuming their child discovered it was a sex number, just carried on, which amuses me. Like, just sheer curiosity took the child to stay on the line for a long period of time. Did the studio...
Maybe they talked across wires. I'm looking for Santa. I'll be your Santa. Like, it's possible.
Yeah. Who knows? But it was at that point the studio took action for future releases. Disney said they would purchase the phone number and disconnect the service, which they did. The part of the film was then cut and changed on DVD releases and even on today on Disney Plus, also on television broadcasts. Now the number that is said is 1-800-POUND. As of May 2020, the 1-800-SPANK-ME line is still available on certain versions, though. The copy on Vudu, Amazon Prime, YouTube, and Google Play all still have the original line. But playing the movie through Fandango now, iTunes, or Disney Plus presents the edited version.
Did you think that? But the bit of that interests me is, do Disney still own 1-800-SPANK-ME then?
Almost certainly. Almost certainly. So I've got the scene here, actually, with the original line. Have we got it? Let me see. Let's put the sound on. So it's Charlie is saying goodbye. It's when he doesn't want to spend Christmas Eve with his dad.
1-800-SPANK-ME. I know that number.
Very good. So she hands him her phone number.
Right, okay.
And he makes that joke. So there you go. Very funny.
Yeah,
very funny.
That is amusing.
I love that. I love everything about that.
Although also, is he implying his ex-wife is a telephone sex worker?
I don't know, because at the end of that he goes, I know that number. Like, he's implying that he rings it often. So I don't know if he's making fun of himself or her or what there. It's a bit of a weird line. I don't think it matters that gets cut out of certain versions, to be honest with you.
No, not at all. I don't think that's changing the plot at all.
No, I would stick with that. Apparently, so I didn't catch this one. I meant to go look back and see if I could find this, and I didn't get a chance. But apparently, there's a hidden Mickey in this movie. For those who don't know, the hidden Mickey phenomenon. It's the shape of Mickey Mouse's head. The circle with the two circle ears, and it appears in many movies related to Disney. Apparently, when they're leaving the North Pole in the sleigh and they pass by the moon has a distinct hidden Mickey, sort of in the texture of it in the craters. Cool. I didn't find it myself, but I'm sure that's
cool.
there. The film was originally going to be distributed through Hollywood Pictures, which is a separate distributor owned by Disney. They often use that to put out movies that they weren't sure would sit with their, very closely guarded quote-unquote brand. They thought maybe the movie might be too adult for that. But basically, positive reactions from a test screening, particularly among children, led to them shifting it to a full Walt Disney Pictures release. Although Hollywood Pictures are still credited and were mentioned as the distributor in the early teaser trailers. So, I thought that was quite interesting. Disney very rarely did that. We talked about that recently when Disney were too scared to put out Nightmare Before Christmas, so they put it out through Touchstone instead. One of the distributors they'd acquired, and we sort of said that these days it's quite funny because obviously Disney very much embrace Nightmare Before Christmas. If you go to a Disney store, there's Nightmare Before Christmas stuff everywhere. It's very much a Disney movie these days. It's just interesting. So the kid who plays Charlie, Eric Lloyd, wore fake teeth for the entire movie because apparently he'd accidentally knocked out his front teeth but just before filming began. So that is very unfortunate, and I can't imagine helped speaking. If you put prosthetic front teeth in front of me, I'd be honking a bit weird. It's amazing that kid spits out any line in a normal way in this movie.
For sure, and he does a good job as well. I think it's a good child performance, but I genuinely do.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think there's always a real risk, isn't there, with kid actors of them being annoying, and I think he doesn't. I think he's on the right side of that. So apparently Tim Allen did not have a good time shooting this movie. It was shot in the summer. Most of it was shot inside non-air conditioned buildings, and he was generally speaking in full costume with fat suits, physical prosthetics, the beard, the Santa suit itself. Apparently he was required to take several very frequent breaks to cool off during any given day or scene. When he got too warm, he'd occasionally forget about Oh yeah, this is funny. When he'd get too warm, he would get frustrated and forget about the children playing the elves on being on set and would be cursing. So he got in trouble for that a couple of times, apparently. On top of that, apparently the Santa suit rubbed his neck and caused him to develop a very painful rash. So I feel for him. I mean, maybe don't swear near the kids, but I get it.
Yeah, it's that's one of those things where I really do feel for him, but there is an element of presumably it was filmed in the summer because that was a break in his hugely successful TV show. So, in between lucrative, successful TV sitcom filming, he got to film a movie.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. This is a good detail. When Scott is in denial of his Santa Claus heritage, his Converse shoes are black, but when he starts to accept it, he starts wearing red Converse shoes.
Oh, that's a good attention to detail touch.
Yeah, there's tons of them in this movie. I like that a lot.
I feel like I was harsh on Tim Allen there. It's all relative. I appreciate that. I'm just saying it would have been filmed in the summer to bend round his schedule, I assume, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I agree. During the filming of the Harry Potter movies, Daniel Radcliffe went through 160 pairs of glasses. That's
cool.
Interesting.
Nice.
When Charlie and the new Santa return to the North Pole for the second Christmas, Bernard introduces them to tech-savvy elf Quentin, who tells Santa about all the gadgets his sleigh now has. This is an intentional nod to James Bond and the character Q, who is a master of technology for James Bond and his vehicles. I think I might have covered that earlier, actually, but yeah, I think that's cool. The good little detail. I like that too.
Yeah, I'd agree.
We might have already talked about this too, but when Scott and Charlie are seated at Denny's, there is a boy putting on a coat who watches them sit down. That boy has pointy ears and is also clearly an elf. Neat hidden elves all over this movie. The grunting sounds used for the Comet, for Comet the reindeer, are actually reused sound effects from the video game Doom from 1993. That blows my mind.
We're getting a lot of reused, because in my head I was like, we've done this trivia, haven't we? But it's because last week we had the trivia about Jurassic Park and reusing sounds. So
they reused the sounds
crazy.
of the T-Rex and the raptors for the animals on Pandora in Avatar. Yeah, bit of a weird one, but cool. Very strange.
Wow, cool.
When Scott and Charlie arrive at the North Pole for the first time, the code the elf enters is 1239 into the keypad. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was created in December 39, hence 1239. So yeah, little nod to Rudolph, even though he's not in the movie.
Must be a copyright thing then for them to nod to Rudolph but not feature Rudolph.
Yeah, because it's not like they forgot.
No.
Yeah, so apparently, this one's a good one. Scott gives a bunch of alternate names for Santa Claus to the police officer in the interrogation scene. Scott imitates Ed Sullivan when he says the last name, Topo Gigio, which is not a name for Santa, but the name of a small Italian mouse puppet that would appear many times on the Ed Sullivan Show. Very strange, but fun, I guess. Bit of a weird one, that one.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
The police use a chalkboard to draw out the layout of the neighborhood to capture Scott. On it, there is a note about the neighbors being away in Florida, which is apparently a nod to Home Alone.
That's great.
Which has the McAllister family who live in Chicago, where this movie is set, off to Florida. They go there. That's the second one. So that's a nod to Home Alone 2, specifically.
Oh, good. That makes even more. That's brilliant, because I was thinking Home Alone 1, Kevin McAllister is going to notice Santa Claus kicking around, but they wouldn't in Home Alone 2 because none of them are there. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, there you go. This one's just I went and looked this up. Well, it's in the trivia, but I was going on my way to figure this out. So that odd-looking skateboard scooter toy that Charlie is sitting on Christmas morning, it's called a rad board, apparently. It was a brief fad. It has 8 wheels, 4 handle grips, and 3 boards. And I guess they thought it would be the next thing in skateboarding technology, and it didn't take. But it's a fucking weird device. So weird. Every time I see that, even as a kid when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck is that thing he sat on?
Yeah, that is weird. I noticed that as well.
No, I feel like when I was a kid, I always spotted that toy. I went, what is that thing? because that does not look fun. Although, by the way, how ripped off does he get? 1 year he gets that, and the next year he gets a fucking soccer ball. I'm saying soccer ball, it's an American movie. But yeah, all he got for Christmas the year after is a fucking is a ball.
Yeah, well, it's even worse the year after, when his dad's literally Santa.
Yeah, madness. Anyway, we're now on to our world famous segment, Chris. It's time, of course, for Cars Exist. Very good. So, I had to do. This one wasn't one of the ones where someone had naturally told me the car in the trivia, so I had to do a bit of digging on this one. But I like this one because I found the car and then I found a comment that gives some more detail. Right. So the car itself that Scott Calvin drives is a 1990 Ford Taurus. Yeah. I'm going to read you the comment under this. A 1990 Ford Taurus show, baby. V6 24 valve 222 HP Yamaha engine with a 5-speed MTX transmission and a leather appointed luxury interior to boot. That is one hot machine.
Why are you not getting this person to do Cars Exist?
I know. And then he added, or as Tim Allen might say, ho ho ho.
That's stunning. Have you clicked on? Have they commented on other things? Can you click on their profile?
Oh, that's a good question. So the guy goes under the pseudonym John Johnny. Oh my god. Chris, I'm so glad I clicked this. So he's from Canada. It doesn't tell me where else he's commented. Wait, no, I can though. There's user contributions. I can find that. I'll come back to that in a second. But his profile, he says, I specialize in information about the Ford Taurus.
That's
which
amazing.
is the car that we've got in this movie. And he says, but mostly just from 1986 to 1995. I think the 1996 to 2006 Taurus is really ugly. Then he puts my car collection, a 91 Taurus, a 93 Lincoln Mark III, and a 95 Taurus MXT in silver and grey. The first one is black, he says
That's
here.
amazing.
Now, I've clicked on his message history, Chris. He's commented, oh my God.
Presumably on mostly Ford Tauruses. Can I just say, we're not... This isn't... Well, I assume I speak for both of us. This is amazing. We love this guy. And to have an interest and be passionate about something like that specific is phenomenal. We're not laughing at this guy. This is amazing. This is wonderful. I assume I speak for both of us when I say that.
Yeah, no, 100% you do. I'm counting how many posts. Bear with me.
That is absolutely brilliant. I love this man. And I love his commitment to Ford Tauruses.
Oh my God. So Chris, I'm about to do the math on this. This website loads, it looks like 50 comments per page.
Mm-hmm.
He has 19 pages of comments.
Are they all
which means
Tauruses?
he's yeah. Oh, I'll look at that in a second. He's done about 950 comments. Now, a lot of the time, he's just confirming the year of the model. So a lot of the comments are very simple. 86 to 88 Taurus LX. L model due to the reverse light design. That's a 95 Lincoln Mark V LSC. A 1990 Ford Taurus. It has the titanium metal paint, only available from 1989 to 1990, but it does seem to have the 1990 interior.
That is brilliant.
1995 Ford Taurus SE because of the spoiler. This guy just loves the Ford Taurus. So many of these are Ford Tauruses. This is incredible.
He said that. He's upfront about that in his profile.
I love this man. Right, we go back to page 19. So, all right, first post from this guy is from 2006, Chris.
Yeah.
And his first comments are so much more detailed. Wow. They were like, he did really long messages originally. These are amazing. I noticed when I watched this movie that the Taurus had quite a bit of rust on the car. Wasn't this Taurus only 10 or 11 years old when the movie was made? I wouldn't have expected it to have this much rust, as I own a showroom condition 91 Ford Taurus with no rust at all. Beautiful paint and interior, and it's 15 years old. Although I do baby my Taurus and treat it like it like it was a show. By the way, I would like a SHO large capital letters to join my collection along with my L. Check out my Taurus and he's posted a picture of his own Taurus. Oh, link down. He did post that in 2006. And if you couldn't tell, I'm a real Taurus enthusiast and don't care what anyone says. I love this man so much.
I love him. That's fantastic.
So he's done a bunch of these comments, and then they slowly become just like him confirming the year or the model. And then, so that's in 2006 he starts. His most recent comment, Chris, December 2021.
Oh, brilliant.
So he's still cracking on.
What film?
That is a fucking great question. A movie that came out last year called 8-Bit Christmas. The Taurus will have shown up in that, I assume. Oh, no. Sorry. Yeah. It's a 1989 Ford Taurus L. The movie was filmed in Toronto this March, and they posted pictures of the cars on their Instagram page. So he says...
obviously it's pure coincidence, but the fact that the most recent movie is also a Christmas movie is stunning.
So good. Honestly, Chris, I don't need anything for Christmas this year.
That is absolutely phenomenal.
I've got the joy of discovering that JJ_John Johnny exists. Sorry, JJ_John_Johnny.
We salute you.
Absolutely,
Johnny.
We do.
That is fantastic.
The world would, honestly, I cannot tell you how much of a better place the world would be if we had more JJ_John_Johnnies from Canada.
Imagine if everyone had an interest like that they loved, and they were just that passionate about that. And it's pure, it's pure joy.
Not in a toxic way or an aggressive way.
He's not shitting. He's not commenting on other movies about how it would be better if the cars in those movies were Ford Tauruses. Like, he's not, he's just taking what he loves and talking about what he loves. Genuinely, the world would be a better place if everyone was like this man.
Yep. And so I'd like to quote our friend JJ_John_Johnny and say in response to a picture posted from the movie Legion of Fire Killer Ants, it's definitely a 1989 Taurus L. It has the old dashboard and the crank windows. That means it can only be an L model.
Brilliant. Love it.
This might be the greatest Cars Exist. Do we retire Cars Exist, Lyle? Are we ever beating this? This is incredible.
Well, I don't know. It depends if there's another. I mean, I just hope we do another movie with a Ford Taurus in.
See if Johnny's had a comment. Oh man, so good. Oh, I love you, Johnny.
Brilliant.
Oh man, you absolutely beautiful
genuinely
person.
The world would be a better place.
I want to find out though. He says the 1996 to 2006 Taurus is really ugly. He doesn't like it, so he only likes up to 2000. Is he right? 2006 Taurus. Oh yeah, I don't like that car so much. Oh yeah, it's got this really rounded, weird Ford bonnet like thing that a lot of Fords had from like the early thousands. But I don't know. I don't
Oh
like that
yeah.
car.
Oh no, that's not as nice.
No. Let me double check the 1995-ish model. The one that's basically. Oh yes, yeah, it's boxier, but I like it. Yeah, he's right. It's a better design. It's very of its era. You wouldn't really get a car designed like that anymore, to be honest. But it's definitely a better designed car than the modern one. I agree with him.
Oh, it's so good. So good. And
Right.
what a way to end, Triv. So Dan, where are we going next week?
Well, I mean, I honestly, Chris, I just want to sit and read this guy's comments out for 2 hours. Can we do that?
We can't know. What we see?
So next. Sorry, I'm blown away. And for anyone wondering what the hell website this is, because we didn't really clarify. I should really, just very briefly, for anyone who's like really confused. When we started doing this, I noticed a trend where in like 9 out of 10 movies we would review, when we went to like the IMDb for trivia, there would always be the car driven by the hero is the such and such a thing. It would just give the model. And I found that really weirdly odd that would be trivia. Like, cars exist. Congratulations. People drive cars.
Which is where the Cars Exist moniker comes from.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So we did, and then for a while I just naturally was continuing to do no cars because they just kept being in most movies. And there was eventually an occasion where, for whatever reason, no one had thought to put the cars that were in the movie in the thing. And I tried figuring it out myself because I didn't want to not do the segment. And I realized something called the Internet Movie Car Database exists, where if you type in a movie, you can find out what cars were in the movie. And I've been dipping in and out of that since, depending on the movie and whether I need to, because sometimes it is just in the trivia, sometimes it isn't, sometimes it's a movie that doesn't have cars in it and there's no point. But yeah, I've been using that website since. It's very handy. A lot of very impassioned people identifying the exact models and makes of cars as they appear in film, and I found that very useful to continue the segment, and I want to thank everyone that contributes to that website because you're all great. But that is particularly spectacular. That's
amazing.
made my day. And also, credit to the Internet Movie Car Database for allowing me to just click on the guy, get his profile, and then click on another button just to get every comment he's ever provided.
Yeah, but it's a good way of I imagine, if you're another big Ford Taurus fan, then potentially,
right,
you can connect with people that way.
Can I message this guy and tell him he's my favourite person? No, I can't. That's a shame. I love this guy. Anyway. So yeah, that's that. There are thanks for listening to the podcast, everyone. I'll do all the end bits now because Oh no, next week.
You got to confirm. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Next week we're doing Santa Claus 2. Obviously, we're gonna find out whether that's a shit show or not. And then I presume that the week after, Chris won't be throwing a curveball. He'll be picking Santa Claus 3, even worse somehow.
Yes, I will be.
I think that's the name of the movie. The Santa Claus 3.
3 is definitely
the Santa Claus 3. This time we gave up.
It's actually, technically, it is the only one with the subtitle. I think it's the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause, and it is definitely the worst of the 3.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's we'll reconvene. If you've got thoughts on this movie, or quite rightly, JJ_John_Johnny from Canada, who loves Ford Tauruses and owns 2 of them, let us know. But also, if you've got thoughts on the movie, I guess, that we just reviewed for 2 hours, you can do that too. You can do it in a few different places. You can get us on email, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. You can go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/nothingbutstatic.uk. Leave a comment there. You can get us on Twitter. I'm @Dan Doolan. Chris is @CBillingham with 2 M's. And we have a Nothing But Static Twitter account that's @NothingButStatic without the G. If you'd like to support the show and also hear next week's episode right now, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, where you can subscribe for as little as $1 a month. You get episodes 1 week early of both this and our other show, Analyzing Avatar. You can support us in many other ways, though. The simplest and freest, well, not freest, but a simple and free way to help us out is to support us by subscribing and liking, reviewing on any platform that we have content on. So YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you go, you like, subscribe, whatever it is. That tells that service you enjoyed it and makes that service more likely to recommend it to other people. Of course, you can do a bit of that yourself. Become a town crier, go out into the middle of your town, waving a bell and telling everyone all about how great this podcast is. You do that too. Or you could just, tell a friend. We'd appreciate that too. Of course, you're welcome to continue supporting us in just the way you're doing it right now. Just listening. We really appreciate anyone doing that. And of course, if you don't enjoy this podcast, understandable. We rambled for a long time, as we always do. Not for everyone. That's fine. Stop listening would be my advice. We love you, but stop listening would be it. That's everything, I think. Did I miss anything? No, I think I covered it all.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be confident.
I think you did. Join us next week for the madness of the Santa Claus continuing. We will see you there. Thank you very much, as always, for listening. And my name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.
How this is
give us another comment.
How this is ended up longer than Avatar, I'll never know.
Oh yeah. Well, I know, and give us another comment from Johnny.
Oh, yeah, okay. The comments posted. Come on, John. What you at?
How can we talk about that for 15 minutes and then you go, I don't know how it ended up longer than Avatar?
That's true. This is a good one. The Taurus LX wagon, I reckon the cladding and bumpers would be all grey if it was the 1989-91 LX. So he's saying it's the 96 to 88 one.
Brilliant. On that note, see you later, people.
Oh, wait, sorry. I just saw Justin Bieber's name somehow in this. How has Justin Bieber got a place in this? Oh, there's a Lincoln Mark III in a Chris Brown video featuring Justin Bieber. And he says, I don't think I could hate Justin Bieber any more than I did. Then I saw this pic. Is Justin Bieber, like, crapping on a Ford Taurus in this picture?
I don't know. Can you see the picture?
I'm trying to find it now. Oh, he stood on it.
Maybe he stood on it. Yeah, there you go.
Outrageous.
Oh, Bieber. He's always standing on classic 90s cars.
Oh, I love it so much. I love everything about this.
So good.
So good. Anyway.
Bye.
Bye.